Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Bobby Ann McLeod. Bobby Ann lived with her parents, Donna and Adrian, and her brother Lee in Plymouth, a lively coastal town in southwest England. On November 20th, 2021, Bobby Ann left her home around 5:45 p.m., heading to the bus stop on Sheepstore Road. She had told her father that she was going downtown to meet her boyfriend and friends, something she had done many times before. The bus stop was familiar to her, and she reached it within a few minutes. An hour and a half passed, and Bobby Ann's mother, Donna, sent her a text to check if she had arrived safely. When Bobby Ann didn't reply, Donna tried calling her, but her daughter also didn't answer. This was unusual, and Donna became worried. About an hour later, Bobby Ann's boyfriend called her parents, asking if she was at home. He was concerned because Bobby Ann hadn't shown up for their scheduled meeting, and he hadn't been able to reach her by phone. Bobby Ann's parents called all her friends, but none of them knew her whereabouts. With growing concern, they reported her missing to the police. It was already past 9 p.m. The next morning, November 21st, police along with McLeod's family and volunteers began a thorough search of the area. Flyers with Bobby Ann's picture were distributed across the city, and her disappearance was shared on social media and local news outlets. Bobby Ann's brother, Lee, made a desperate plea on social media, urging everyone in Plymouth to help search for her. He asked people to report any information or sightings to him. The police investigation revealed that Bobby Ann had planned to take a bus downtown, but she never boarded it. However, a local resident came forward, stating that he had seen Bobby Ann at the bus stop the previous evening. This new information confirms that Bobby Ann did indeed arrive at the bus stop but did not get on the bus for unknown reasons. Further evidence was found when police discovered Bobby Ann's wireless headphones in the walkway behind the bus stop. The area was sealed off, and police officers conducted a meticulous search of the surrounding area, scouring every inch for potential clues. Evidence was collected along the girl's usual route from her home to the bus stop, as well as on surrounding streets. Since Bobby Ann was last seen at the bus stop but never boarded the bus, and her headphones were found nearby, authorities suspected she might have been kidnapped. Investigators attempted to locate her cell phone, which was detected within the city limits, but they couldn't pinpoint its exact location. All calls to her number went straight to voicemail. The police eventually found Bobby Ann's phone. On November 22nd, police, family members, and volunteers conducted a thorough search of the area surrounding Bobby Ann's home, but unfortunately, no leads were found. The following evening, November 23rd, the police announced the discovery of a woman's body at Bavazan Beach, approximately 8 miles from the bus stop where Bobby Ann was last seen. The body was found in a wooded area near the shore, about half a mile inland. The body found was indeed Bobby Ann's. Her death was a devastating blow to her loved ones. A vigil was held in her memory near the bus stop where she was last seen, and the family expressed their gratitude to everyone who attended. During the vigil, Bobby Ann's mother, Donna, sent heartfelt love to her daughter. On behalf of her family, she expressed gratitude to everyone for coming together during this difficult time. She admits that although their beautiful Bobby Ann's life was taken, she will always be remembered. Bobby Ann McLeod's brother, Lee McLeod, paid a heartfelt tribute to his sister by sharing a childhood photo of the two of them. The picture showed the siblings smiling and wearing their primary school uniforms. In a message accompanying the photo, Lee expressed his grief and love for his sister. He wrote, "You didn't deserve this. You were a beautiful and talented girl, and I'm grateful to have had you as my little sister. I'll always treasure the adventures and journeys we had. Rest easy now." The police investigation revealed that Bobby Ann's body was found naked, but the medical examiner found no evidence of rape. However, She had suffered severe head and facial injuries, including 14 lacerations. The investigation has made progress. A man who walked into the police station on November 23rd, the same day the body was found. At 1:17 p.m., he approached the police and offered to provide information about the missing girl, stating that he wanted to help the police and her family. That man was Cody Ackland, 24, admitted to the crime. He confessed to kidnapping and killing Bobby Ann, providing details of the offense. Cody lived fairly close to the bus stop where Bobby Ann was last seen, and he was taken into custody as the prime suspect. Cody confirmed that he had abducted Bobby Ann from the bus stop, despite never having met her before the evening of the incident. Cody Ackland was a talented musician and guitarist in a local indie rock band, but he had a dark secret. Behind his charming facade, Cody was fascinated with serial killers and had a list of idols that included notorious murderers such as Joseph D'Angelo Jr., Andre Chikatilo, Ivan Milat, Fred West, and Tommy Sells. However, he worshipped a criminal he considered a hero, Ted Bundy, who confessed to killing at least 30 people. Cody's obsession with Ted was evident in the content he consumed. Investigators found 3,216 images on his phone, many of which were disturbing and reminiscent of horror movies. In the lead-up to a young girl named Bobby Ann's death, Cody's internet searches became increasingly focused on serial killers and crimes. He also researched remote locations on Dartmoor, potential weapons, and browsed online stores for items such as baseball bats, ski masks, and waterproof clothing. However, his clandestine activities eventually led him to commit a serious crime. In a tragic twist of fate, Bobby Ann unknowingly crossed paths with Cody. On the evening of the incident, Bobby Ann arrived at the bus stop around 6:15 p.m. Cody, who was driving his Ford Fiesta in the area, spotted her and decided to target her. According to Cody's own confession, Bobby Ann's resemblance to his ex-girlfriend was merely a coincidence and not the reason for the attack. In reality, Cody had been planning to carry out a violent act for some time and was simply looking for a victim. The police investigation concluded that Cody would have carried out his plan regardless of who he encountered, and that Bobby Ann was a random victim. Cody parked his car behind a bus stop after spotting Bobby Ann. He observed her for a few minutes to ensure no one else was around. Then, he retrieved a hammer he had previously purchased and crept up to Bobby Ann, striking her twice in the head. Believing she was dead, Cody returned to his car and began to leave the scene. However, as he drove away, he noticed that Bobby Ann was alive and attempting to get up. Cody returned to the bus stop, moved Bobby Ann's semi-conscious body to his car, and drove 20 miles to the Belover Forest parking lot in Dartmoor. At 7:45 p.m., he stopped in the parking lot, which was located in a wooded area. His intention was to leave Bobby Ann's body there, but he discovered that she was still alive and conscious. Despite this, Cody did not seek help or take Bobby Ann to a hospital. Instead, he assisted her out of the car. When Bobby Ann expressed her fear, Cody responded by saying he was scared as well, admitting that he had never committed such an act before. He then struck Bobby Ann 12 times on the head with the hammer. In an attempt to destroy evidence, Cody burned Bobby Ann's purse. Even after inflicting severe injuries on Bobby Ann, she was still able to make a noise, prompting Cody to express his surprise for her resilience. Cody had one last opportunity to save Bobby Ann's life, but he chose not to take it. Instead, he claimed to have ended her suffering. He then placed her body in the trunk of his car and drove approximately 30 miles to Bavazand, where he hid the body after removing his shoes, clothing, and jewelry. He returned home around 10 p.m. and went to bed. The next day, Cody traveled to Tamerton Foley, north of Plymouth, and disposed of the hammer he used in the crime by throwing it into the River Tamar. He also discarded a bag containing his and Bobby Ann's blood-stained clothing in nearby allotments in Coombe Lane. Despite a thorough search, the hammer was never found. On November 21st, Cody spent the day socializing with friends, attending a pizza gathering, a band rehearsal, and a night out at the pub. Those who saw him that day noticed he was in an unusually good mood, happy, joking, and affectionate with his friends. The following day, November 22nd, Cody continued to enjoy himself, buying popcorn and watching a movie at the theater. Meanwhile, police, family, and volunteers were searching for Bobby Ann, and Cody was keeping up with the latest news on his phone. On November 23rd, Cody went to work at a car service company. During his lunch break, he sent a message to a chat room for his music group, expressing his love for them, and also texted his mother to tell her how much he loved her. Shortly after, he went to the police station and confessed to the crime. Shortly after, Cody's band members have issued a statement on Facebook announcing that they are disbanding the group with immediate effect as a mark of respect for the late Bobby Ann McLeod. They expressed their shock and disbelief at the tragic events, saying their thoughts and prayers are with Bobby Ann's family and friends, who must be devastated by their loss. The band members explained that they cannot continue as a group and have decided to go their separate ways. They will not be making any further comments at this time. In a separate development, police revealed that they had found physical evidence linking Cody to the crime scene. This included Bobby Ann's DNA in his car and on his sneakers. The trial of Cody Ackland took place in May 2022. Cody's attorney, Ray Tully, stated that psychiatrists had evaluated Cody and found that he did not have a mental illness. However, Cody had experienced a difficult childhood and had been diagnosed with ADHD, dyslexia, depression, and anxiety. By the age of 19, Cody had a 7-year history of depression. Ray explained that Cody had not received much support or comfort from his family or school life. Specifically, Cody's father had not provided him with the guidance and support he needed. During sentencing, Judge Robert Linford told Cody that his actions were premeditated and brutal. The judge stated that the evidence showed Cody had intended to kill his victim and that the crime was a prolonged and horrific ordeal for the victim. The judge emphasized that Cody had planned and carried out the murder and that the victim's life had been brutally cut short. As a result, Cody Ackland, 24, was sentenced to life in prison. He will serve a minimum of 31 years before being eligible to apply for parole. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ollie Kemp. Alexandra Ollie Elizabeth Kemp was born October 11, 1982, in Leawood. She was the oldest of 3 children and the only daughter of her parents. After graduating high school with honors, Alexandra enrolled at Kansas State University. Following her freshman year, she returned to her hometown of Leawood for summer break. During her break, Alexandra took a part-time job at a local outdoor swimming pool near her parents' house, where her younger brother Tyler already worked. The pool was a quiet neighborhood spot, catering mainly to local residents, and it still operates today. On June 18, 2002, Alexandra reported to work on an overcast day because resulted in fewer visitors than usual. At 5 p.m., Tyler arrived at the pool to start his shift, but his sister Alexandra was nowhere to be found. Her phone and purse were still on the table where she usually sat, which made Tyler confused and worried. He immediately called his parents to report that Alexandra had vanished. Their father, Roger Kemp, rushed to the scene and began searching for his daughter. He first checked the pool, but it was empty. Next, he went to the small pump room near the pool, which contained equipment for water purification, a ladder, and other items. Upon entering the pump room, Roger didn't see anything out of the ordinary at first. However, he soon noticed a leg protruding from under a tarp. As he lifted the tarp, he was met with a horrific sight: his daughter Alexandra, brutally beaten and naked from the waist down, with multiple bruises on her face and body. Roger quickly called 911 and spoke with the operator. When the ambulance arrived, Roger was performing CPR on his daughter. The paramedics took Alexandra to the hospital, but despite their best efforts, she sadly did not survive. Alexandra was declared dead shortly after arrival at the hospital. An examination revealed that the cause of death was strangulation, despite the presence of multiple severe injuries. A thorough investigation found no evidence of forced intimacy, although her body was partially unclothed. The police collected DNA samples from Alexandra's body and secured the pool area, searching for clues to identify the perpetrator. Evidence of a struggle was evident in the room where Roger discovered Alexandra's body, including her flip-flops found in separate locations. Additionally, an open bottle of antiseptic gel and its cap were found at the scene. A few days later, while the police continued to investigate, Alexandra's family and hundreds of mourners gathered to pay their respects at a funeral ceremony. Phil Howes, Alexandra's boyfriend since high school, was initially suspected in her death. As a pool administrator, he worked the morning shift on the day of her death, and Alexandra arrived at noon to start her 5-hour shift. Although Phil often stayed after work to spend time with Alexandra, he left promptly after his shift that day because they had plans for the evening. Despite being an early suspect, Phil had a solid alibi and was quickly cleared by the police. In an interview with detectives, Phil mentioned that Alexandra often felt uncomfortable being alone at work because some of the lawn maintenance workers would stare at her and try to flirt. The police investigated the lawn workers, but each of them had an alibi. However, the inquiry wasn't entirely fruitless. Several workers reported seeing a suspicious man with a video camera lurking in the bushes near the pool the day before Alexandra's death, apparently watching the female lifeguards in swimsuits. The police were given conflicting reports about Alexandra's final hours. Some people said she left the scene in an old Ford pickup truck, while others mentioned different circumstances. A study of Alexandra's mobile phone activity revealed that she had made plans with a friend, Laurel, to meet on the day she died. However, Alexandra didn't show up. When Laurel went to the police station to give her account of events, she explained that Alexandra had asked her to come to the pool to keep her company until her shift ended. According to Laurel, the pool was empty that day due to the poor weather, which made Alexandra anxious. When Laurel arrived at the pool at around 2:30 p.m., she didn't see Alexandra anywhere. Instead, a man she didn't know emerged from the pool house and waved at her with a smile. Laurel thought this man might be Alexandra's boss, and she decided to leave so as not to get her friend in trouble for socializing during work hours. At the time, she had no reason to think that anything was amiss. The police investigation led them away from Alexandra's workplace and to a completely different suspect. As a witness, Laurel provided a detailed description of the person she believed committed the crime. The police used this description to create a sketch of the suspect, who was identified as a white man around 30 years old, with a stocky build, short brown hair, and driving a 1980 Ford pickup truck. The suspect's identity was narrowed down when someone recognized the description as matching James Strader, a local mechanic who owned an old Ford pickup truck. James was questioned by the police and appeared to match the sketch, but he denied any involvement in Alexandra's death. His employer verified his alibi, stating that James was at work on the day of the murder. As a result, James was released from custody. While the police had eliminated James as a suspect, forensic analysis of evidence collected from the crime scene revealed male DNA on an antiseptic gel tube and on Alexandra's body. Unfortunately, the DNA did not match anyone in the police database, leaving the case still unsolved. Alexandra's family, friends, and boyfriend were ruled out as suspects after DNA tests showed no match with the DNA samples found on her body. The investigation was driven by Alexandra's father, Roger Kemp, who was determined to find his daughter's killer. After losing his child, Roger felt like he had lost his purpose in life. However, he found a new reason to keep going: justice for Alexandra. In an interview, Roger explained his approach: "You can either give up or keep fighting. I chose to fight." Impressed by his dedication, the police department gave Roger a workspace where he could collect and share information and collaborate with the investigators. As they explored all available leads, Roger and the investigators contacted the popular TV show America's Most Wanted and asked them to feature Alexandra's case. The show's producers agreed, and her story was aired. The episode generated hundreds of calls from viewers with potential tips. Although the authorities thoroughly investigated each lead, none of them led to a breakthrough, and the case stalled once again. In February 2003, 8 months after Alexandra's death, a promising new lead emerged. Following a thorough investigation, police in Utah apprehended a suspect. 3 separate witnesses, including 2 women and a 14-year-old girl, came forward to report being forced into intimate encounters with a man. He had managed to evade capture initially, but was eventually tracked down and arrested in Utah. The arrested individual was identified as James Strader, the same person who had been questioned by Kansas police earlier. Notably, James bore a strong physical resemblance to the suspect's composite sketch. James was questioned by the police, but they failed to collect his DNA sample at the time. This might have been because his employer had convinced the police that James was at work on the day of the crime and had not left the premises. Despite this, James denied any involvement in Alexandra Kemp's death. Although he resembled the suspect in the composite sketch, James claimed he had not been near the pool on the day of the crime. He eventually provided a DNA sample for analysis. The results indicates that his DNA did not match the DNA found on Alexandra's body or the antiseptic gel tube. James was later imprisoned for unrelated charges, and the investigation into Alexandra Kemp's death hit a dead end once again. A year after Alexandra's death, the police still had no leads. Roger Kemp, Alexandra's father, and Phil House, her boyfriend, continued to fight for justice. Phil, who was also the president of the student community, sent the composite sketch of the suspect to students at other universities via email and asked them to watch an episode of America's Most Wanted that featured Alexandra Kemp's case. A year had passed, but the police and relatives' efforts had yielded no results in the Alexandra Kemp case. Undeterred, Roger Kemp, Alexandra's father, continued his quest for justice. He reached out to the America's Most Wanted program again, requesting a rerun of the episode about Alexandra's death. The show's creators asked if there were any new developments, and although Roger replied that there were none, his determination impressed them, leading to the episode being aired again. The rerun generated a fresh wave of calls to the police, prompting Roger to offer a $25,000 reward for any information that could help identify the person responsible for his daughter's death. The city of Leawood authorities increased the reward to $50,000. Roger also distributed flyers featuring his daughter's photo, a sketch of the suspect, and details about the reward. As Roger drove along the highway, he noticed billboards and realized they could be an effective way to raise awareness about the case. He began contacting advertising agencies to inquire about the cost of posting the information on a billboard. When he called the Lamar Advertising Company, the owner refused to take his money, offering to display the information on multiple billboards for free instead. Roger decided to publicize a sketch of the suspect and reward information on billboards along a major highway. The police received hundreds of tips, which took time to investigate. Notably, multiple tips mentioned the same individual, Teddy Hoover, who owned an old Ford pickup truck and worked in pool maintenance. His appearance matched the suspect's sketch, making it unlikely to be a coincidence. The police launched a search for Teddy Hoover and found his address in Kansas. When they arrived, Teddy answered the door, appearing surprised and nervous. However, this reaction didn't necessarily imply guilt, as many people become nervous when confronted by the police. When questioned about his whereabouts on June 18, 2002, Teddy claimed he couldn't remember, which was understandable given the year time lapse. Teddy denied any involvement in maintaining the pool where Alexandra worked. Nevertheless, the detectives asked him to provide a voluntary DNA sample to rule him out as a suspect. Teddy declined, stating he needed to consult with a lawyer first. He promised to contact the police after speaking with his attorney. The next day, Teddy's lawyer reached out to the investigators, expressing his client's concerns about his DNA sample being added to a database. Teddy reportedly believed in various conspiracy theories and feared that if he cooperated with the police, they would use the information against him in other cases. In an effort to alleviate his concerns, the investigators promised not to enter his DNA into any database and only use it to compare with the DNA found on Alexandra Kemp. The lawyer agreed to speak with his client and said he would call back. As they waited for the call, the police reviewed the case materials again and stumbled upon a piece of paper in one of the folders with a name that caught their attention. On the day of Alexandra's death, detectives began questioning onlookers who had gathered by the pool, trying to determine if anyone had seen anything suspicious. Interestingly, one of the people they spoke with was Teddy Hoover, who had claimed he had never been to the crime scene before. As the investigation continued, detectives grew increasingly confident that Teddy Hoover might be the man they had been searching for over the past 2 years. After several days, investigators contacted Teddy's lawyer to ask if his client was willing to provide a DNA sample. However, the lawyer responded by stating that his client had refused his services and broken off contact. Police immediately went to Teddy's house, but he had already escaped. As a result, the 29-year-old suspect was placed on the National Wanted list. Despite the efforts of the detectives, Teddy managed to evade capture for months. Billboards featuring his image were still up, but the search had yielded nothing. It wasn't until September 2004, when an anonymous caller contacted the police, that a new lead emerged. According to the caller, he knew the name of Teddy's girlfriend, with whom Teddy was living in Kansas. Detectives sought to locate Laura Barr, a woman connected to Teddy Hoover, but discovered she had left the state at the same time he escaped. This led them to investigate further. The U.S. Postal Service informed the Kansas State Police that Laura was receiving mail in Litchfield, Connecticut, along with a man named Benjamin Appleby, at the same address. The house where they resided was secluded and located in a rural area. Authorities suspected that Benjamin Appleby might be an alias for Teddy Hoover. To aid in the investigation, detectives from Leawood contacted the Connecticut State Police, requesting their assistance in locating Benjamin. It was discovered that he had a prior record in Connecticut, with an outstanding arrest warrant stemming from a 1997 incident where he had exposed himself to a schoolgirl. However, Benjamin had evaded capture and fled the state. With the existing warrant, detectives proceeded to the address associated with Benjamin's mail. Upon arrival, they found him at home and immediately took him into custody. As suspected, Benjamin Appleby was confirmed to be Teddy Hoover. It was revealed that while detectives in Kansas had been seeking a DNA sample from Teddy in connection with Alexandra Kemp's death, he had returned to Connecticut and resumed using his real name, attempting to maintain a low profile and escape notice. To apprehend Benjamin, detectives from Leawood traveled to Connecticut, anticipating that he would once again claim innocence. Before bringing him in for questioning, they devised a plan to unsettle him. They filled the interrogation room with crime scene photos and pictures of Alexandra, and placed folders with his name on the table, creating the illusion that the investigation had substantial evidence against him. When Benjamin entered the interrogation room, he was visibly shaken and unable to speak. A detective confronted him, inquiring about the implications of obtaining his DNA sample. Shortly after, Benjamin broke down in tears, confessing to Alexandra's death. He then recounted the events of the fateful June day, explaining that he had noticed Alexandra, found her attractive, and attempted to flirt with her. When she entered the pump room, he followed her, locked the door, and trapped her inside. When Benjamin touched she fought back, leaving him feeling humiliated. In a fit of anger, he attacked her, beating and strangling her until she lost consciousness. Benjamin then attempted to take advantage of her body, undressing her partially. He retrieved a tube of antiseptic gel from a first aid kit, intending to use it as a lubricant. However, just as he was about to proceed, the sound of a car horn distracted him. The victim's friend, who was waiting in a car behind a fence, had noticed something was amiss and sounded the horn. Fearing he would be caught, Benjamin hastily covered the body and fled the scene. Later, Benjamin returned to the area, where he encountered Alexandra's friend, whom he greeted with a smile and a wave, trying to appear nonchalant. He then got into his pickup truck and drove away. Hours later, Benjamin returned to the crime scene again, this time blending in with the crowd of onlookers gathered near the pool. The DNA evidence ultimately led to Benjamin's downfall. Tests revealed that the DNA found on the tube of antiseptic gel and on Alexandra's body matched Benjamin's. Thanks in large part to the efforts of investigator Roger Kemp, the police were finally able to identify the man responsible for Alexandra's murder, more than 2 years after the crime was committed. Benjamin Appleby claimed he initially wanted to plead guilty to avoid putting Alexandra's family through further emotional distress. However, at his first court hearing, he suddenly declared his innocence, stating that his confession was made under duress. Despite this, DNA analysis revealed that his DNA was the only sample found on the victim's body, making it difficult to dispute his involvement. Benjamin's lawyers attempted to argue that their client did not intentionally take Alexandra's life, admitting that he was responsible for her death but claiming it was not premeditated. However, forensic experts pointed out that Benjamin had strangled Alexandra for approximately 10 minutes, during which time he could have stopped but chose not to. The prosecution argued that Benjamin's sole intention was to observe Alexandra. On the day of the incident, June 18, 2002, the pool area was empty due to cloudy weather, allowing Benjamin to take advantage of the situation. He was found guilty by a jury in December 2005 and sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 50 years, as well as an additional 19 years for attempting to force Alexandra into intimacy. In 2019, Benjamin appealed the decision, but the court upheld the life imprisonment sentence for first-degree murder. The Court of Appeal also ruled that the attempt to force Alexandra into intimacy was already taken into account during the initial sentencing. Benjamin was sentenced twice for the same crime, prompting the court to overturn the second conviction. However, even if Benjamin is released on parole, he will be 81 years old by that time. The authorities involved in the case credit Roger Kemp's persistence for helping them catch the culprit. While Benjamin was in prison, Roger and his wife established a self-defense program for girls, teaching thousands of girls and women across the country basic self-defense techniques. Roger Kemp's tireless efforts to bring attention to the case and his work in creating a safe community did not go unnoticed. He was awarded the Presidential Citizens Medal by Barack Obama at the White House. Until his passing at 77 on March 1, 2022, Roger continued to work for the foundation he established in his daughter's name. His ultimate goal was to make a difference in at least one person's life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Vanessa Marcotte. On August 7, 2016, 27-year-old Vanessa Marcotte visited her mother, Rosanna, in Princeton, Massachusetts. Vanessa, an active person who enjoyed outdoor activities like walking, yoga, and running, decided to go for a run on that warm and sunny day. She was scheduled to take a bus to New York City later that day, where she worked and lived. However, Vanessa failed to return home after her run, which was unusual for her. Her concerned mother, Rosanna, sought help from the police. The case drew widespread national media attention due to its rarity in Princeton, which had not seen a similar incident in 30 years. Vanessa Marcotte was born on June 17, 1989, in Leominster, Massachusetts. She was an exceptional student and graduated with highest honors from Boston University in 2011, earning a bachelor's degree in communications. After college, she worked at WordStream, an online marketing software startup in Boston, before becoming an account manager at Google's New York City office. Every couple of months, Vanessa would visit her mother and aunt in Princeton, a small rural town with a population of around 4,000. As an only child, Vanessa's mother, Rosanna, cherished their time together and looked forward to her daughter's visits. On Sunday, August 7, 2016, Vanessa left her mother's house on Brook Station Road around 1 p.m. to go for a run before catching the commuter bus back to New York later that day. The area she planned to run in was familiar to her. However, when several hours passed and Vanessa failed to return, her mother grew concerned and contacted the police. Officers promptly launched a search, focusing on the route Vanessa was expected to have taken. At 8:20 p.m., a police dog tracked a scent to a densely vegetated area about 60 yards from the road and less than a mile from Rosanna Marcotte's home. There, the search team found the body of a woman, who was quickly identified as Vanessa Marcotte. A preliminary examination revealed that her death was a result of a crime. Vanessa's body was found without clothes, and it had burn marks on her legs, hands, and face. The location where the body was discovered was secluded, with no nearby houses, only the road and woods on either side. Vanessa's cell phone and headphones were missing, and despite a thorough search of the surrounding area, police were unable to find them. Investigators believed that the perpetrator had intentionally taken these items to avoid leaving behind DNA evidence. A sneaker with burn marks was found next to the body, and similar burn marks were discovered in other locations. Detectives concluded that the perpetrator had used gasoline in an attempt to destroy DNA evidence. A forensic investigation into Vanessa's death revealed that she was killed by strangulation. Her struggles against her attacker resulted in the presence of an unknown person's DNA under her fingernails. The fact that her clothes were removed suggests a brief but clear motive. The medical examination found evidence of contact with a male. DNA testing did not produce a match in either local or national databases. The violent crime sent shockwaves through the small town of Princeton, with a population of under 4,000 people. The incident was highly unusual for the area, prompting widespread concern. Local authorities urged residents of Princeton and surrounding areas to remain vigilant and report any suspicious activity to the Massachusetts State Hotline or the Princeton Police Department. In a press conference on August 11, Worcester District Attorney Joseph Early Jr. confirmed that the suspect is likely a male who sustained minor injuries, including cuts, bruises, and scratches, during the struggle with Vanessa. The news of Vanessa Marcotte's death sent shockwaves through her family, the Princeton community, and her co-workers. A Google spokesperson expressed the company's condolences, describing Marcotte as a beloved team member who worked in the New York office for a year and a half. She was known for her bright smile, dedication to volunteer work, and enthusiasm for Boston sports. Google is deeply saddened by her loss and is thinking of her family and friends. Boston University, Vanessa Marcotte's alma mater, also paid tribute to her. The university's executive director of media relations, Colin Riley, said, "We are heartbroken for her family and friends. They are in our thoughts and prayers." Initially, police investigated a possible connection between Vanessa Marcotte's death and the murder of another runner, Karina Vetrano, which occurred a few days earlier in New York City. On August 2, 2016, Vetrano went for a run in Spring Creek Park in Queens, despite her father's concerns about her running alone. She was last seen alive around 5 p.m., just before entering the park. When she failed to respond to calls and texts, her father alerted the police, who began searching for her around 11 p.m. Tragically, her father found her body face down about 15 feet from the trail. Karina Vetrano's murder shared similarities with Vanessa Marcotte's case, including the fact that her body was found exposed and she had been strangled. However, investigators initially did not believe the cases were connected. 6 months after Vetrano's murder, 20-year-old Chanel Lewis was arrested and later sentenced to life in prison without parole after his DNA was matched to evidence found on Vetrano's body. In contrast, the investigation into Vanessa Marcotte's murder remained ongoing. Detectives believed that Vanessa Marcotte killer likely lived in or frequently visited Princeton and was familiar with the area. They also thought that Vanessa Marcotte did not know her killer and that their encounter was accidental. To aid in the investigation, law enforcement set up separate 24-hour phone lines for the public to report any information. A key eyewitness came forward, reporting that they saw Vanessa stop at a local convenience store for a drink of water around 1 p.m. on August 7th. She was last seen walking and talking on her cell phone. The attack on Vanessa is believed to have occurred within 2 hours of her being seen outside the store. Her phone was last active at 2:11 p.m. and has remained off since. Despite an extensive search of the area where her body was found in the surrounding neighborhood, police initially found few leads. It wasn't until 3 months later that a new witness came forward with crucial information. The witness reported seeing a dark-colored Ford SUV parked near the crime scene on August 7th on 2 separate occasions. The first sighting was at 12:45 p.m., when the witness saw the driver, a Hispanic man between 25 and 35 years old, standing next to the vehicle and talking on the phone. The second sighting was at 2:05 p.m., when the witness drove by the same location and saw the SUV still parked, but with its hood down and no one in sight. This new information led authorities to launch a search for a Hispanic man who owns a black SUV and may live in the Princeton area. On February 23, 2017, 6 months after Vanessa's death, Worcester County District Attorney Joseph Early Jr. released new details about the investigation. DNA found on Vanessa's body had been analyzed, and a suspect profile was created based on the DNA and witness statements. The suspect was described as a Hispanic male, 20 to 30 years old, with an athletic build, medium height, and short or shaved hair. He was believed to have had access to a dark-colored SUV on the day of the crime and to have suffered visible upper body injuries shortly after the attack. About 3 weeks later, a police officer in Worcester County spotted a man who matched the suspect's description. The man was driving a vehicle identical to the one seen on the day of Vanessa's death. The officer quickly noted the license plate number and identified the car's owner. The police then visited the owner's residence, where they found 31-year-old Angelo Colon Ortiz. Colin Ortiz was a 30-year-old husband and father of 3 who had recently moved to Worcester, Massachusetts, from Puerto Rico. He worked as a delivery driver for a FedEx contractor and was familiar with the Princeton area, where he often made deliveries. Despite his clean record, Colin's behavior was concerning to those around him. Neighbors in Worcester described him as having a perverse nature and often making vulgar comments to people in the neighborhood. A former Princeton postal worker also reported that Colin frequently made crude comments about her and other women to his co-workers. When questioned by police about the attack on Vanessa Marcotte, Colin claimed he did not know her and couldn't remember if he was in Princeton on the day of the incident. However, he did agree to provide a DNA sample, signing documents to allow his DNA to be analyzed. The lab took some time to process the DNA test, which ultimately revealed a match between Colin Ortiz's DNA and the DNA found under Vanessa Marcotte's fingernails on April 15, 2017. As a result, Colin was arrested and charged with the crime just 3 days later. Prosecutors presented evidence that on the day of the murder, Colin purchased $5 worth of gasoline from a store located 6 miles from the crime scene at 2:35 p.m. This suggested that Colin had returned to the scene after Vanessa's death in an attempt to destroy evidence, including his DNA on her body. The district attorney argued that the DNA evidence was collected through proper procedures, which led to the charges against Colin. However, Colin's attorneys countered that their client's DNA sample was obtained irregularly, casting doubt on the legitimacy of the evidence. The defense team argued that Colin Ortiz's language barrier hindered his ability to understand that providing a DNA sample to the police was optional. In fact, Ortiz stated that he was unaware that he could refuse to provide one. Colin, a U.S. citizen born in Puerto Rico, does not speak, read, or understand English, as he declared in an affidavit. He recounted that on March 16, 2017, 2 white state police officers visited his home with a translator who spoke a Spanish dialect that was unfamiliar to him. The trial extended for several years, ultimately leading to Judge Janet Kenton Walker's decision on January 11, 2022, to deny the defense's motion to suppress the DNA evidence. Colin maintained his innocence to the original charge of first-degree murder, but through a plea agreement, he pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of second-degree murder, which carries a shorter sentence. Angelo Colin Ortiz, 36, pleaded guilty to the robbery charge and was sentenced to life in prison in October 2022. As part of the plea bargain, Colin will serve 20 years for the robbery charge, followed by a life sentence with a minimum of 25 years before being eligible for parole. This means he will spend at least 45 years in prison before he can be considered for parole. The Vanessa Marcotte family agreed to the plea bargain to avoid a lengthy and emotionally challenging trial. In a statement, they expressed relief that the trial ended in a way that ensures Colin will no longer be able to harm anyone. Vanessa Marcotte's father stated that he is pleased that the monster will be kept off the streets and that he will not live to see Colin's parole hearing. Colin's sentence brings closure to the Vanessa Marcotte family, who can now find some comfort in knowing that justice has been served and that Colin will be held accountable for his actions. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Manjit Panghali. In every person's life, 2 decisions hold utmost significance: their career path and the choice of a life partner. Securing one's desired career alongside a caring and affectionate life companion can make life feel like a flawless masterpiece. Manjit Panghali, a resident of Vancouver, Canada, had a life that seemed to embody this ideal. But the tragic conclusion of her beautiful existence left an indelible mark on the entire nation of Canada. October 18, 2006, marked the date when the news of Manjit Panghali's disappearance emerged. However, just 5 days later, on October 23rd, her charred body was discovered on a beach shore. After this discovery, the police promptly reached the crime scene and informed Manjit's in-laws about the incident. The news quickly spread across the city of Vancouver that a partially burnt body of a woman had been found on the beach. Manjit's family was unable to comprehend why someone would commit such an act against her, as Manjit was known to be a person who always greeted everyone with a friendly smile. However, after months of investigation, the real killer of Manjit was identified, which surprised Manjit's family a lot. But in the end, to know how Manjit disappeared, who killed her, and how the killer killed Manjit, we will also need to know a little about Manjit's background. Manjit was a Canadian resident of Indian origin, residing in Vancouver, British Columbia, with her husband, Mukhtiar Panghali, and their 3-year-old daughter Maya. Manjit's family had come to Canada in search of a better life and settled in Vancouver. They had worked hard to provide their family and children with every possible happiness. Manjit had a happy childhood. Like any young woman, she also had dreams. She had decided long ago that she wanted to become a teacher. Manjit pursued her education to become a teacher at the university, and it was during this time that she met Mukhtiar. Mukhtiar's family also hailed from India, and he had come to Canada to pursue his career in the teaching field. According to Manjit, Mukhtiar was a cheerful person just like her, which gradually made Manjit start liking him. Their meeting at the university gradually developed into feelings of love. After dating for a while, they eventually decided to get married. When both families found out that they both wanted to get married, they were quite happy. Mukhtiar's family trusted that Mukhtiar is a good and responsible guy who will always keep their daughter happy. Additionally, Mukhtiar's family also liked Manjit as a good girl. Following this, Manjit and Mukhtiar got married in 1997. In the eyes of both families, they were a perfect happy couple who were quite friendly and cheerful. However, just a few years later, when Mukhtiar's true nature was revealed, Manjit faced difficulties in her married life. Mukhtiar belonged to a conservative family, and his thinking was somewhat similar. According to him, Manjit should serve him, and when Mukhtiar returned home from work, there should be delicious food ready on his table. But now, Manjit was quite troubled by Mukhtiar's behavior. She was a woman of strong determination and hard work. She had never imagined Mukhtiar's mindset would be like this. When Manjit told her sisters and friends about the difficulties in her married life, everyone told her that these are just the initial days of her relationship, and there are always some differences or arguments between every new married couple. She just needs to be a little patient. After this, along with Manjit, her sister and Manjit's friends also forgot about this matter. Just as Manjit had planned the rest of her life, she had also planned her pregnancy in a similar way. Now, she wanted to become a mother. As a result, 6 years after getting married, her dream also came true in 2003. Manjit gave birth to a daughter whom she named Maya. Manjit was quite happy, and Mukhtiar was also very happy. Now, Mukhtiar spent most of his time with Maya. Mukhtiar loved his daughter very much. Because of this, everyone began to feel that perhaps whatever difficulties were coming in Manjit's married life, they had all ended. But this was not true. After Maya's birth, Mukhtiar started drinking even more. Whenever he drank, he would stay out of the house until late at night, and when he came home, he expected his wife to have cooked dinner and be waiting for him. But Manjit, who wanted care and support after pregnancy, was quite broken by her husband's behavior. Because of this, Manjit slipped into depression, and the dreams she had once had were now shattering in front of her eyes. Now she understood how big a mistake she had made in understanding Mukhtiar, and she was not sure what to do to set her health and future in the right direction. During this time, Manjit does not take any major action and remains patiently at Mukhtiar's house for 3 years. However, in 2006, Manjit plans to have a second child, hoping to bring happiness back into the household. Nonetheless, due to constant arguments, she begins to feel that this may no longer be possible. Shortly after, Manjit becomes pregnant again, and Mukhtiar is quite pleased upon learning this news. Unexpectedly, Mati's behavior changes significantly. He starts to love and care for Manjit as he had before, which makes Manjit very happy as she feels she has regained his lost love. However, she does not realize that this happiness will be short-lived. On October 18, 2006, Manjit had left for her prenatal yoga class, but a significant amount of time passed, and she did not return home. The next day, Mukhtiar called Manjit's family and informed them that she hadn't come home since the previous evening. Upon hearing this, Manjit's family became somewhat worried. They then called Manjit's sister, Jasmine, and narrated the whole story. Jasmine also called all of Manjit's friends, but Manjit hadn't gone to any of their houses. In fact, whenever there was an argument between Mukhtiar and Manjit, Manjit often left with her daughter without informing anyone. Sometimes going to a hotel or a friend's house, everyone thought that the same thing had happened again this time, and Manjit would return home shortly. However, this time, Manjit's daughter, Maya, was at home, and this worried everyone a lot, because Manjit loved her daughter very much and never left her alone anywhere. It had been a whole day since Manjit had gone missing, so everyone began to suspect that something unfortunate might have happened to her. Therefore, her husband, Mukhtiar, filed a missing person complaint at a nearby police station on the night of October 19th. Apart from this, Mukhtiar also called all the acquaintances to inquire about Manjit, but no one had seen her. By now, the news had spread in the media that a married woman named Manjit Panghali had been missing for a few days, and Mukhtiar, Manjit's husband, appealed for her safety and return. During the police investigation, the phone calls of all household members were traced, but the police did not find any significant information. Here too, the date was now October 23, 2006, and Manjit had been missing for 5 days. Manjit's husband and family members became worried when the police informed them that a charred body had been found on the shore of a place called South Delta, and they were asked to come and identify it. When Manjit's family members went there to see, they found that the body was indeed Manjit's. Manjit's body was sent for a post-mortem examination, and the report revealed that she was pregnant with a female fetus at the time of her death. This news deeply distressed Manjit's family, who were left to wonder what wrongdoing their daughter had committed that led to her being brutally murdered by being set on fire. From a logical perspective, Manjit's killer not only took her life, but also the life of the child she was carrying in her womb. The post-mortem report also reveals that Manjit's death was not caused by burning, but rather the killer first strangled Manjit, and then, when she had stopped breathing, attempted to burn her body. During the investigation, the police also found Manjit's car parked at a distance from her dead body. Forensic examination of the car revealed no signs of forced entry or any marks of struggle inside the car. Subsequently, the police first checked Manjit's background, but didn't find any suspects who had enmity with Manjit. Due to this reason, the police suspected that perhaps the killer was someone who knows Manjit well. Hence, the police's direct suspicion falls on Manjit's family members. The police first thought of questioning Manjit's husband Mukhtiar. During the interrogation, Mukhtiar stated that Manjit has been in regular contact with her college friend Tony for the past year, and they sometimes went to dinner together. After Mukhtiar's statement, the police now doubted Tony, and then they searched for and interrogated Tony as well. However, upon talking to Tony, the police found out that Tony didn't have any relationship with Manjit, as Mukhtiar had claimed. Tony and Manjit were just good friends, and this fact was confirmed when Tony answered all questions correctly in the lie detector test. Now the police had to determine why Mukhtiar had lied to them. Therefore, the interrogation with Mukhtiar resumed. During this interrogation, the police discovered that there was an individual from the families of Manjit and Mukhtiar who was quite close to both of them. In fact, that person's name was Sukender, and he was Mukhtiar's younger brother. Sukender Panghali used to live in the basement of Manjit and Mukhtiar's house. However, at Manjit's insistence, Mukhtiar had kicked Sukender out of the house. Sukender was the one who used to persuade Mukhtiar to party until late at night and then drink with him. It was because of Sukender's influence that Mukhtiar's habit of drinking alcohol had increased even more. Manjit noticed how Sukender's presence was negatively impacting her life, so she gave her husband Mukhtiar an ultimatum: either Sukender stays, or she stays in this house. Mukhtiar faced a difficult choice between supporting his brother or his wife. He decided to ask Sukender to leave and remain with Manjit. After investigating the incident, the police initially suspected Sukender, but could not find any evidence against him. Sukender was able to prove that he was with his friends on the night Manjit disappeared. As a result, the police cleared Sukender of any wrongdoing. However, they later detained Mukhtiar again for further questioning. By now, the police had determined that the relationship between Manjit and Mukhtiar had begun to deteriorate just a few months after their marriage. Whenever Manjit discovered Mukhtiar's daily habit of drinking alcohol, she scolded him. On the other hand, Manjit had hurt Mukhtiar's brother Sukender by throwing him out of the house, which had wounded Mukhtiar's ego and masculinity, causing him to harbor even more resentment towards Manjit. However, despite this, there was no solid evidence to make Mukhtiar the prime suspect in Manjit's murder case. Moreover, Manjit's family and friends also had substantial trust in him. But now the police have decided to re-examine all the evidence. First, the police noticed that the driver's seat of the car was pushed back, which indicated that Manjit had not driven the car there by herself. Rather, there was someone else with her in the car at the time. Secondly, Mukhtiar had mentioned the location of Manjit's prenatal classes in his statement, and the car was parked near that area. However, during the investigation, it was found that there were no prenatal yoga classes in that area, and the actual location where Manjit used to attend her prenatal classes was approximately 15 miles away from the location provided by Mukhtiar. Consequently, Mukhtiar's lie was caught. In simple words, Mukhtiar told the police that Manjit's prenatal yoga class location was where her dead body was found. But in reality, Manjit's prenatal classes were far away from that place. After that, the police tracked Mukhti's phone's location and call records. Here, the police discovered that Mukhtiar had Manjit's cell phone, in which he had inserted his own SIM and was using it. This revealed to the police that on the evening of October 18th, Manjit had visited Mukhti's house. Therefore, Mukhtiar had Manjit's cell phone. By now, all the statements given by Mukhtiar were proving to be false. Then, the police got solid evidence in their hands. They obtained CCTV footage from a gas station near Manjit's house, in which Mukhtiar was seen buying an old newspaper and a lighter from that gas station. Although Mukhtiar used to drink alcohol, he did not smoke cigarettes, so why would he buy a lighter and an old newspaper? Here, Mukhtiar became a prime suspect in the eyes of the police, so the police took immediate action. Nearly 6 months later, on March 12, 2006, Mukhtiar was arrested in his wife Manjit's murder case. The police interrogated Mukhtiar rigorously. At first, he completely denied the claim of murdering Manjit, portraying himself as innocent. But then, after some time, his courage broke, and he confessed to his crime. Now the culprit was caught. When Mukhtiar explained why he had mercilessly killed his pregnant wife on October 18th, the police was shaken to the core. Mukhtiar explained that after Manjit's yoga class, he took her home, where an argument broke out between them. The argument escalated to the point that, in a fit of rage, Mukhtiar strangled Manjit, killing her. He then took her body to a secluded seaside location in South Delta and burned it in an attempt to destroy any evidence that could be used by the police. In addition, Mukhtiar provided the reason behind wanting to kill Manjit. Essentially, Mukhtiar had developed hatred towards Manjit. Mukhtiar's mind was filled with intense dislike and negativity towards Manjit, which became the cause of Manjit's death. Hearing this, both Manjit's and Mukhtiar's families and friends were greatly surprised. Subsequently, in November 2010, Mukhtiar was found guilty in the Manjit murder case, and he was also charged with second-degree murder. It was a shocking murder that sent shockwaves across the province. Former school teacher Mukhtiar Pangali strangled his pregnant wife and then burned her body. Immediately after Mukhti's arrest, both Manjit's and Mukhti's families fought a case in court for the full custody of Mukhti's 3-year-old daughter Maya. However, in the end, Maya's full custody was awarded to Manjit's sister, Jasmine Bambra. Then, in February 2011, Mukhtiar was sentenced to life imprisonment. Crown Prosecutor Dennis Murray narrated the incident in the following manner. Immediately after the verdict of the Manjit murder case, Mukhtiar killed Manjit immediately after she returned from prenatal yoga classes. Then he took her body to a secluded coastal area in South Delta in Manjit's own car and set it on fire. He delayed filing a missing complaint as much as possible. In December 2010, the Canadian police publicly disclosed Manjit's diary and letters. After this, several media houses extensively scrutinized these letters, revealing that Manjit was clinically depressed. However, she was making a lot of effort to save her married life. During discussions with media houses, a member of Manjit's family revealed that she had been struggling with depression since her first pregnancy. Mukhtiar not only killed Manjit, but also took 2 lives. She was so happy to be pregnant. It was something that she had wanted for a long time. So with that, the Manjit Panghali murder case comes to an end. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Shanae Brooke Edwards. Shanae Brooke Edwards was born in 1989 in Warrnambool, Australia. Shanae grew up with her parents and older brother Tyson. Although her early life and upbringing are not well documented, her loved ones remembered her as an adventure seeker who loved nature, hiking, motorcycling, and animals. She was a kind-hearted, genuine person who formed deep, sincere connections with others, showing generosity, patience, love, and kindness to everyone she met. In 2019, Shanae traveled to Georgia, a country that had long fascinated her with its natural beauty, rich history, and landmarks. Her boyfriend, Maori El Sayed, a Lebanese national, had planned to join her in Georgia, but was unable to do so because the country's borders were closed to unvaccinated individuals at the time. Shanae resided in Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, where she worked as an English teacher. This allowed her to support herself financially while exploring the country and visiting new destinations. She formed close bonds with like-minded friends who shared her passion for travel. On July 29, 2021, Shanae uploaded a photo to her social media profile, captioning it with the single word, joy. The image was taken during a scenic motorcycle ride, an activity she thoroughly enjoyed. The following day, July 30, 2021, Shanae decided to hike up Matatsminda, a popular tourist attraction situated in the heart of Tbilisi. According to her friends, Shanae would often take leisurely strolls in the wooded area near the mountain, and she had never encountered any issues or threats to her personal safety. On July 30, 2021, Shanae left her residence around 3:30 p.m. and was last spotted near the Church of St. Michael of Tavare, located at the foot of Mount Matatsminda, which serves as a starting point for hikers. Shanae was scheduled to meet friends at a cafe in the capital city, but she failed to appear. When attempts to reach her by phone proved unsuccessful, her friends decided to file a missing persons report with the local authorities. Meanwhile, a friend of Shanae's living in California grew concerned and placed a call to Shanae's phone. When the call was answered, Shanae could be heard screaming, "Please let me go, okay? Just let me go," indicating that she was being attacked and desperately seeking release. The call was abruptly disconnected, and when Shanae's friend tried to call back, there was no answer. There are conflicting accounts of what Shanae's friend in California did next. According to some reports, she posted an urgent message to a Facebook group comprised of expats living in Georgia, asking someone to alert the police to the disturbing phone call. Other sources claim that Shanae's friend directly contacted the Georgian police and relayed the distressing details. It is certain that within hours of Shanae making a frightening phone call, Georgian police became aware of it and began to investigate. Hundreds of police officers and volunteers were deployed to search the area, focusing on the slopes of Mount Matatsminda. The search party utilized search dogs and drones, but Shanae remained missing. By sunset, her phone was still off, and she had not visited any local hospitals. This lack of progress was ominous, as was confirmed the following day. Tragically, on July 31st, after an extensive search, 31-year-old Shanae Brooke Edwards was discovered deceased near a hiking trail. The perpetrator attempted to conceal evidence by hiding the body under tree branches and leaves. A knife, believed to be the crime weapon, was found nearby. Shanae's phone was soon discovered on the mountainside. Further inspection of the crime scene revealed an old, rusty shovel, a fireplace, used needles, and numerous empty bottles. Georgia's Interior Minister revealed to local media that the police have uncovered information not yet disclosed to the public to protect the integrity of the investigation. He assured that the ministry and police officers are doing everything possible to find the perpetrator. The forensic examination of Shanae's body revealed 13 stab wounds, with 5 in the neck area, leading the police to conclude that the perpetrator undoubtedly intended to kill the young woman. Signs of strangulation were also found on her neck. After the authorities officially confirmed Shanae's death, the media reported that the crime was motivated by lust, but the Georgian police denied this, citing the forensic medical examiner's failure to find any signs of a crime against the woman's integrity. Shanae's boyfriend, Moody El-Sayed, has vowed to track down the culprit, no matter how long it takes, and exact revenge. Shanae's death was a devastating blow to her friends, and a particularly traumatic experience for her family, who lived on another continent. They faced the difficult task of transporting her body back home, while the police worked to identify the perpetrator. Although the police are directly responsible for preventing crimes and capturing criminals, in this case, there was an added concern. Georgia's billion-dollar tourism industry could be severely impacted by the fact that a tourist had lost her life in the capital city, a popular tourist destination. The police conducted an extensive investigation, interviewing over 200 people, including Shanae's friends, co-workers, neighbors, and employees and visitors of Matatsminda Park. They examined the roots of the case and reviewed video footage of Shanae's movements on the day she went missing. In an expat Facebook group, a local woman reported hearing a woman screaming on the trails below Matatsminda Park around an hour after Shanae left home. Another woman in the same group claimed to have witnessed a disturbing scene on the mountain the day before Shanae went missing, in which a man was seen aggressively assaulting a woman in the same area where the crime eventually took place. At the same time, the laboratory analyzed the crime weapon and discovered a male DNA sample, but no matches were found in the Georgian police database. Consequently, the samples were sent to the databases of 194 Interpol member states for further checking. Witness interviews revealed that Shanae had no enemies, no history of conflict with anyone, and no association with individuals of questionable character, suggesting she may have been a random victim of a crime with an unclear motive. The police conducted a meticulous investigation, collecting genetic samples from several dozen individuals who could potentially have been involved in the crime, and subjected each to rigorous scrutiny. Following a thorough and multifaceted investigation, authorities were able to narrow down the list of suspects until they found a DNA match. 40 days after Shanae Brooke Edwards' death, the Georgia police released a statement announcing the arrest of a 33-year-old man, Rafael Marsokolov, a Georgian citizen born in 1988. The evidence gathered during the investigation, including testimony, surveillance footage, genetic tests, and other proof, led to his arrest on September 8th. Marsokolov's lawyer stated that his client denies all charges, including robbery and the murder of Shanae Brooke Edwards, and has pleaded not guilty. The lawyer claimed that Marsokolov was not involved in the case and has chosen to exercise his right to remain silent. After Marsokolov's identity was made public, his image was broadcast on television. A woman from the Georgian capital took to Facebook to share a post revealing that her friend had been attacked by 2 men on Mount Matatsminda a few months prior. And although the police were aware of the perpetrators' identities, the case was closed. She suggested that if the police had done their job properly, the Australian girl might still be alive. Additionally, Marsokolov's own Facebook page revealed that he was an activist for the ruling Georgian Dream Party. On September 10, 2021, the Tbilisi court denied Marsokolov's request to be released on bail while awaiting trial, instead keeping him in custody. The police had obtained strong physical evidence, as well as damning testimony from Marsokolov's brother and wife, who revealed that Marsokolov had confessed to the crime at home. He warned them that if they told anyone about his involvement in Shanae Brooke Edwards' attack, their young child would face the same fate. In October 2021, the Edwards family wrote a heartfelt letter describing Shanae's personality and expressing gratitude to everyone who had supported them. They specifically thanked the government of Georgia for its financial assistance in repatriating Shanae's body and the Georgian people for their ongoing love, attention, and support during this difficult and tragic period. In February 2022, the first hearing on the case took place under Georgian law. Markelov faced a possible sentence of 16 to 20 years in prison. At the trial, he chose not to remain silent and pleaded guilty to robbery. However, he denied intentionally taking Shanae's life. The prosecutor disagreed, pointing out that the 13 stab wounds, including 5 to the neck, indicated Markelov's intent to kill the victim. After his knife broke, he even strangled Shanae. The defense claimed that Markelov has mental health issues and was in an abnormal state when the crime occurred. However, a psychological examination found him to be sane, allowing the court to impose a meaningful punishment based on the severity of the crime. The prosecutor noted that Markelov's blood tested positive for powerful drugs at the time of his arrest, but this did not diminish his guilt. Markelov admitted his guilt and apologized to Shanae Brooke Edwards' family in his final statement. According to the alleged motive, Markelov had intended to steal Shanae's iPhone 12, but his plan was foiled when she threw the phone into a ravine. Only 2 people knew what happened that day, and sadly, one of them is no longer alive to tell the tale. The prosecution requested a postponement of the sentencing, as the victim's brother, Tyson Edwards, wanted to attend the hearing. In a statement, Shanae Brooke Edwards' family urged the Georgian justice system to impose a life imprisonment sentence on Rafael Markelov, citing the tragic and devastating loss of their loved one, who left behind many grieving friends and family members. On March 9, 2022, a trial was held, at which Rafael Markelov was found guilty. Representing the family, Shanae's brother Tyson again requested that the defendant be given a life sentence. Markelov apologized to Tyson Edwards, claiming he was not that kind of person and had simply found himself in this situation. Ultimately, 33-year-old Rafael Markelov was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment, the maximum penalty allowed under Georgian law. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Ada Betty Quadros Fernandez. Ada Quadros was born on September 13, 1977, in the coastal town of Chimote, Peru, to Victor Quadros, a veterinarian, and El Fernandez, a teacher. As the eldest of 4 siblings, Ada consistently excelled academically, winning knowledge contests and enjoying a happy childhood. Growing up, Ada spent a lot of time with one of her sisters on their grandparents' farm, developing a strong connection with nature and animals. This period was one of the happiest times of her life. Ada's family was middle class, not poor, but not wealthy either. During her teenage years, she sought ways to contribute financially, forming an entertainment group with her sister and a friend to perform at children's parties. After high school, Ada enrolled in a private university to study law. But unfortunately, her family's financial situation made it impossible for her to continue, and she was forced to drop out. Despite this setback, Ada was determined to succeed and support her family. With the goal of building a better life in mind, Ada applied for a US visa through the lottery program. Like many young people from Peru and Latin American countries, Ada viewed the United States as a land of unlimited opportunities. She was determined to migrate, work hard, earn a better income, and create a brighter future for herself and her family. Her family was overjoyed for her and sold some of their belongings to gather enough money for her journey. Her initial destination was Texas, where she planned to stay with some relatives. In early 2004, Ada started working as a waitress at a restaurant. Later, she found employment with a company that placed nannies in households, which is how she met the Lazarchuk family. The family consisted of Michael, commonly known as Mike, his wife Renee, and their 3 children, Elisa, and twin boys Ryan and Kyle. Little is known about the family's background, except that Mike and Renee got married in 2000, and shortly after, Renee became pregnant with their first child, Elisa. 4 months after Elisa's birth, Renee was expecting again, this time with twins Kyle and Ryan. The Lazarchuk couple was searching for a reliable nanny to care for their twins when Renee returned to work. Since Elisa was already settled in a daycare where she attended daily and had made friends, they decided to keep her there. After interviewing several candidates, they found Ada to be the most suitable. At 27, Ada was young yet mature, appearing healthy, strong, well-mannered, and cheerful. Renee wanted Ada to start right away so she could spend a few weeks showing her the household routines, explaining where everything was, and outlining her expectations. This would also give Renee the opportunity to observe how Ada interacted with the young twins, who were just over a year old. The family had one non-negotiable condition. They required a commitment from Ada to stay with them for at least 18 months, which she agreed to. Initially, the agreement was that Ada would only spend her days at the Lazarchuk household. But later on, they asked her to move in full-time, and she accepted. As a result, she only went back to her uncle's house on weekends. Everything seemed to be going well, and the Lazarchuk family was more than satisfied with Ada's work and had grown to trust her completely. They had many happy memories, captured in photos, of Ada smiling and caring for the twins. However, the Lazarchuk family's situation took a dramatic turn in the summer of 2005. Ada broke the news to them that her uncles were returning to Peru and then moving to Germany, and she intended to go with them, having already bought her plane ticket for October 29th. This was a blow to the couple, as it was not what they had originally agreed upon. Eventually, they came to terms with it and only asked Ada to stay on until they could find a suitable replacement. They even asked for her help in finding and selecting her successor, and Ada agreed to assist them. After Ada stopped sleeping over at the Lazarchuks, she would go back to her uncle's house every night and return early the next morning. With her departure approaching, the Lazarchuks arranged to meet several potential nannies on Wednesday, October 12th. During the day, Renee asked Ada to prepare macaroni and cheese for the children, which Ada did. After feeding the kids, Ada waited for Renee's return. When Renee got back home, she greeted her children, making sure they were doing fine. After conducting some interviews, she spent over an hour with her kids before putting them to bed. Everything appeared normal. However, at exactly 5 a.m. on Thursday, October 13th, Kyle woke up crying, which was unusual since the twins were heavy sleepers who never woke up on their own. Renee got up, went to their room, comforted Kyle until he fell asleep again, and then returned to bed. At 7:30, 2 hours later, Mike entered the children's room, roused them from sleep, gave them a hug and a kiss, and left them in Ada's care before departing for work. Just before 9:30, Renee awoke, spent time with the twins, changed Ryan's diaper, bid farewell to both Ryan and Kyle, and then headed to work. Throughout this period, the children were doing fine, with the only unusual occurrence being Kyle's early awakening that day. Elisa, their older sister, went to daycare as usual, but around 1 p.m., Ada's 911 call marked a dramatic turn of events. In a highly agitated state, Ada reported that Kyle, one of the children, had stopped breathing and was turning blue. After providing the address, the operator guided Ada through performing CPR on Kyle, while paramedics rushed to the scene. Minutes later, paramedics arrived and took charge of Kyle's care. They questioned Ada, who was very distressed about what had happened. Ada explained that after lunch, she had put Kyle to bed in his crib and left to fetch his brother Ryan. When she returned with Ryan, Kyle suddenly began vomiting and stopped breathing. While paramedics treated Kyle, Ada phoned Renee to update her on the situation, providing a modified account of what had happened. According to Ada, after feeding the children, she had removed Kyle from his high chair and placed him on the playroom floor, as was her usual practice, before going to fetch his brother. However, when she returned, she found Kyle vomiting. She went to the kitchen to grab a bowl to contain the vomit, and upon her return, she discovered that Kyle had fallen. Ada claimed she picked him up, took him to the sink, and performed the breathing rescue technique Renee had taught her, but it didn't work. She also attempted CPR. Following initial treatment, the paramedics rushed Kyle to the nearest hospital. By the time Renee arrived at the house, the ambulance carrying her son had already departed, but the police remained on the scene. Renee took Ryan, the other twin, and asked Ada to accompany them. They followed the police, who escorted them to the hospital. During the drive, Renee called her husband and they met at the medical center. Shortly after, the doctors decided to airlift Kyle to the Dallas Children's Hospital via helicopter. The Lazarevics returned home, leaving Ada to care for Ryan, before heading to the Dallas Children's Hospital. Ada requested they keep her updated about Kyle's condition. Renee worried Ada might be too nervous to care for Ryan, so she called a friend to help at the house. Her friend arrived to find Ada upset, tearful, and concerned about Kyle's fall. Ada explained that Kyle suddenly fell, and she tried to revive him with CPR. She repeatedly expressed her love for Kyle, insisting she'd never harm him. At the Dallas Children's Hospital, the Lazarevic family received devastating news about Kyle's condition. The doctor in charge reported that Kyle had suffered severe head injuries, including multiple bruises on his head, arm, and left shoulder. A neurosurgeon explained to Mike and Renee that urgent action was needed to relieve the pressure on Kyle's brain, but sadly, his survival was unlikely. A child abuse specialist also met with the parents and suggested that Kyle's injuries were consistent with abuse. The specialist emphasized that the injuries were extremely severe, equivalent to those sustained in a severe car accident or a fall from a 6th-floor height. Renee was stunned when she heard the news. At first, she suspected that Ada might have accidentally dropped the child or was too scared or ashamed to admit it. But the doctors clearly explained the severity of Kyle's head injuries, which required a significant amount of force to inflict. This made an accident seem highly unlikely. Renee quickly arranged for another friend to pick up her son, Brian, and take him away from the house. While this was happening at the hospital, Ada became increasingly agitated at home, repeatedly calling Renee's friend to ask about Kyle's condition. When Renee's friend stepped out to pick up her son from school, Ada called her multiple times, inquiring about Kyle. However, when Renee's friend returned to the house, Ada appeared calm, no longer crying or talking. Just then, a police car drove by the house. Upon seeing it, Ada became hysterical, crying uncontrollably and shouting, "No, no, no." She collapsed behind a door, repeatedly insisting that she would never harm Kyle. 2 female detectives arrived to question Ada, as she was the only adult present when the incident occurred, and had called 911 to report the injured child. As the detectives arrived at the house, they heard Ada's cries and got out of their patrol car. Inside, they found Ada extremely agitated. Once she calmed down, she explained that she had removed Kyle from his high chair and placed him on the playroom floor to help him burp after a meal. When Kyle started vomiting, Ada went to the kitchen to get a container to catch the vomit, as Renee disliked stains on the floor. While she was away, Kyle turned blue, fell, and started convulsing. Ada claimed she then took him to the living room, called 911, and followed the dispatcher's instructions. During the interview, the other officer called the hospital to get an update on Kyle's condition. Upon learning the diagnosis, the detectives told Ada that her story didn't add up, given Kyle's injuries. Ada suggested that Kyle might have hit his head when he fell on the playroom floor after she left him alone, but the officers noted that the floor was covered with soft rugs, making this explanation unlikely. Ada then proposed that Kyle might have hit his head on the doorframe when she carried him on her hip. At the officer's request, Ada demonstrated how this could have happened, adding that Mike and Renee often bumped Kyle's head without any issues. The officer checked the spot where Ada claimed Kyle hit his head, but found no signs of a strong impact. When Ada was questioned by the officers, she claimed the injury to her son Kyle was a result of a strong impact when she was running with him in her arms. She denied ever shaking or hitting him or his twin. However, the officers remained skeptical, as the injury seemed inconsistent with Ada's story. They urged her to come clean, explaining that the truth could be crucial in saving Kyle's life. Despite their pleas, Ada refused to provide any further explanation. The officers reported the situation to their command and took Ada into custody for further questioning. Meanwhile, crime scene investigators arrived to process the house. After completing their work, they gave Renee's friend, who was staying at the house, the all clear to clean and organize the property in preparation for the family's return. As Renee's friend and several others cleaned the house, they stumbled upon a piece of adhesive tape sticking out from a cabinet door under the kitchen island. When they opened the door, they noticed it was broken and held together by tape, causing it to become misaligned. They simply resecured it with the tape, but found it odd, as Renee was always meticulous about fixing broken items to prevent her children from getting hurt. Their curiosity piqued. They decided to report the discovery to the police. Shortly after, investigators returned to the scene to collect potential evidence. Later, when questioned about the cabinet door, Renee stated that she frequently used that door and had never seen it being held shut with adhesive tape before. By Friday, October 14th, all of Mike and Renee's hopes had been dashed. The doctors informed them that Kyle was clinically brain dead and had no chance of recovery. Amidst overwhelming grief and indescribable pain, the couple made the difficult decision to authorize the removal of life support. After which, Kyle sadly passed away 3 days later, on October 17th. The detectives questioned Ada, who was in prison on suspicion of premeditated assault on a minor. Ada claimed that on the day before the incident, she was preparing macaroni and cheese at Renee's request. According to Ada, Kyle was sitting on the kitchen counter, fell off, and hit his head hard on the kitchen floor. She picked him up, checked for injuries, and found only redness on his ear and the right side of his head. Ada applied cold compressors and gave him a pain reliever. When asked why she hadn't shared this with the other officers, Ada said she thought they wouldn't believe her. She didn't tell Renee because Renee had a severe headache when she got home from work and requested the lights be turned off and the house be kept quiet due to her migraines. The detectives asked if Ada had fallen with the child, which she strongly denied. During the interrogation, Ada discovered that Kyle had died and broke down in tears for the rest of the interview. The judge charged Ada with aggravated homicide and set bail at $715, an amount neither Ada nor her family could afford, so she remained in custody until the trial. The police hinted that they might charge her with premeditated actions, which could carry the death penalty. The 2005 trial of Kyle's death case heard testimony from the doctor who examined Kyle at Dallas Children's Hospital. The doctor reported that when Kyle arrived, he was already unconscious. Multiple bruises were found on the right side of his head, as well as on the left side of his head, shoulder, and both arms. 2 small hemorrhages forming hematomas were also discovered on the right temple. The doctor identified 3 main areas of hematomas on Kyle's head, indicating 3 separate impacts. The bruises were relatively recent, with one possibly 12 to 16 hours old. Internally, Kyle suffered from brain and retinal bleeding, consistent with severe trauma, and despite no broken bones, his brain tissue was significantly swollen, with an increased head pressure of 90 millimeters of mercury, far exceeding the normal 20 millimeters. Based on these findings, the doctor concluded that Kyle's injuries were consistent with severe blunt force trauma, likely caused by hitting his head against a hard object. The doctor suggested that such injuries could result from violently shaking and swinging a young child's head against a solid object, such as a kitchen cabinet door. A forensic expert from Dallas County testified about the autopsy results, which revealed multiple overlapping small bruises on Kyle's scalp, as well as a couple of small scrapes on his right temple, spaced over a centimeter apart. The autopsy also showed 4 or 5 pairs of similar injuries on his head. The brain had suffered significant bleeding and swelling, with bleeding in the retinas of both eyes, indicating that a substantial amount of force was required to cause such injuries. The expert concluded that Kyle's death was a result of severe head injuries caused by blunt force trauma, and agreed that it was possible that Kyle's head had been struck multiple times against the wooden door of the kitchen cabinet. The expert discounted the possibility that Kyle's injuries were caused by simply bumping into a door frame or falling from the kitchen counter. A forensic analyst provided crucial testimony, measuring the distance between the fasteners on the broken kitchen cabinet door and finding it consistent with the punctate abrasions on Kyle's head. This expert also examined the adhesive tape used to repair the cabinet door, uncovering 2 DNA traces. One of these traces had a significantly higher contribution and matched A's DNA, while the lesser trace remained unidentified. Next, Mike took the stand to testify. He recalled that Kyle was unharmed on the night of October 12th and the morning of October 13th, displaying no bruises. Mike explained that he had prepared breakfast that morning, opening and closing the kitchen cabinet doors to retrieve utensils and food, and verified that all doors were in perfect condition at the time, including the one that was later mysteriously repaired with tape. The parents shared that they had breakfast with the children and engaged in playful activities with the twins, who were crawling around a playhouse. Based on all the evidence, it's clear that Ada was the only adult in the house when the events leading to Kyle's death occurred. While the exact circumstances may never be known for certain, the prosecutor presented a possible scenario at trial. Kyle might have refused to eat his lunch, prompting Ada, who was distracted by watching a soap opera, to remove him from his high chair without noticing the open cabinet door. The prosecutor suggested that Ada's frustration or anger may have led her to attack Kyle's head with the cabinet door, which ultimately broke, leaving screw marks on the child. After all the testimonies and closing arguments, the jury went to deliberate. Upon returning, they found a Quadros guilty of capital murder of a child under 6 years old. As the verdict was read, Ada's mother, Elle Fernandez, who had traveled from Peru when her daughter was arrested, stood up and shouted that she would free because she was innocent. She proclaimed that there was no evidence to convict her daughter and vowed to start over an appeal. Kyle's parents shared photos and videos of their 14-month-old son, recounting his life from birth to days before his death. Family members spoke, while others cried. Sentenced to life without parole in 2006, Ada's family refused to give up, citing racial prejudice and poor defense. They sought appeal funding from Peru, U.S. communities, and solidarity groups. In prison, Ada consistently proclaimed her innocence and seized every opportunity to reiterate it in interviews. Her persistence eventually paid off when, in 2009, her lawyers filed an appeal, highlighting 5 specific mistakes made during the initial trial. The appeals court reviewed the case and dismissed 3 of the claims, but upheld 2. This was sufficient for the judges to quash the conviction and declare the trial null and void due to irregularities. In the aftermath of this ruling, Ada's family launched a new fundraising campaign to raise the $100,000 required to cover the costs of a new trial. It took 3 more years to prepare for the new trial, which finally began on July 10, 2012. The jury selection process started with over 100 candidates, and eventually, 12 jurors were chosen. The trial was held at Collin County's Justice Hall. The defense team argued that Kyle's head injury occurred on October 12th, when he fell from the kitchen counter. They claimed that the situation worsened the following day, when Ada accidentally hit Kyle's head on the door frame while carrying him in her arms. This time around, the defense presented a new piece of evidence: testimony from a forensic expert with 40 years of experience. The expert suggested that some of Kyle's bruises might have been caused during his hospital stay, specifically when doctors inserted a catheter to assess brain swelling. However, the prosecution strongly disputed this new testimony. Additionally, David Gardner, an employee of the kitchen cabinet manufacturer, testified for the defense. He proposed alternative explanations for the broken cabinet door, although he didn't entirely rule out the possibility that Kyle's head could have been struck against it. A pivotal moment in the trial came when Mike took the stand, recounting the heartbreaking final 2 days of Kyle's life. Mike described how Kyle was hooked up to multiple tubes and machines, and ultimately being removed from life support, with his parents by his side as he passed away. The defense team insisted that there wasn't sufficient evidence to convict Ada, but the prosecution countered by emphasizing the medical findings and the numerous inconsistencies in Ada's story. Following the conclusion of the trial, the jury deliberated for 5 hours, even requesting to review the 911 call recordings once more. In the end, they delivered a verdict. Ada Quadros, aged 33 at the time, was guilty of capital murder, and she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In prison, Ada occupied herself by joining the volleyball team, learning Braille, and entering an art competition in which she won with a portrait of the Virgin Mary. She sold her winning artwork to raise money for a new appeal. Despite being behind bars, Ada remains adamant that she is innocent, and her spirit remains unbroken. From her cell, she and her family persist in their efforts to secure an appeal, hoping to prove what they believe to be the truth. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Adam Strong. Adam Strong was born in 1972 in Cornwall, Ontario, Canada. Very little is known about his family and upbringing. He never got married and didn't have any children. Strong worked at a local gas station and also as a security guard on a movie set. People who knew him described him as eccentric and arrogant, believing he was smarter than others. He enjoyed arguing and trying to prove his point until others agreed, but he wasn't typically aggressive. On September 11, 2017, a fisherman in Oshawa, Ontario, made a disturbing discovery in the city harbor. He found a badly disfigured and decomposed human torso floating in the water. The fisherman immediately reported his finding to the police, who retrieved the remains and sent them to forensics for analysis. Due to the body's severe decomposition, experts had a hard time identifying it. The torso was missing limbs and a head, and its internal organs were gone. The only clues about the victim were that she was a young woman between 18 and 25 years old. Her fingerprints, dental records, and distinguishing features couldn't be used for identification. A partial tattoo on her neck was visible, but its design was impossible to determine due to decomposition. As a result, a DNA analysis was the only remaining option, but no matches were found in the existing database. The police then began investigating cases of young women who had gone missing in recent months. In November 2017, nearly 2 months after the discovery, authorities identified the body as 18-year-old Rory Rush, a high school student who had vanished in mid-August. She was several weeks pregnant at the time of her disappearance. Divers searched the harbor and nearby Lake Ontario shoreline, but no other body parts were found. The time and cause of death remained unknown. Experts examined the body and found numerous severe injuries inflicted while Rory was still alive, suggesting she had been tortured over a long period before her death. This discovery led to a major breakthrough in the investigation. 4 months later, an unexpected twist emerged. In December, the Wood family moved into a house at 19 Macmillan Drive, Oshawa, where they noticed an unpleasant smell. Their downstairs neighbor, 45-year-old Adam Strong, assured them it was just a minor plumbing issue that he would fix soon. The neighbor tried to be friendly and polite, but there was something unsettling about him. When David's wife tried to welcome him with homemade cookies, he refused to let her enter his apartment, instead stepping out into the hallway and quickly closing the door behind him. In that brief moment, she caught a glimpse of his living space, which was in disarray, and was overwhelmed by the foul smell inside. Adam took the cookies, thanked the neighbor, and quickly excused himself. Later, when they crossed paths in the yard, he apologized for not inviting her in, explaining that he was about to start renovations, and his apartment was not presentable at the time. Despite his polite demeanor, he seemed visibly nervous. As the Wood family settled into their new home, they tried to ignore the unbearable smell. However, on December 29th, they finally called a plumber to investigate a sewer blockage, which had intensified the stench. Although the issue seemed minor and easily solvable, the discovery the workers made in the pipes was shocking. Even to experienced forensic experts, human body parts had been found. Sean Fenn, a plumber, and his partner were called to the Wood family's apartment to fix a clogged refrigerator drain. However, when they arrived, they were met with an overwhelming stench, which they soon discovered was coming from the apartment below, belonging to Adam Strong. Upon entering Strong's apartment, the smell intensified, becoming almost unbearable. Sean, an experienced plumber, had never encountered anything so foul-smelling in his career. While working to clear the pipe, Strong's behavior became increasingly strange and nervous. He refused to leave the area, constantly asking questions about the process. The plumbers tried to ignore Strong's antics, but what they discovered next would be shocking. As they extracted the blockage, they found over 10 kilograms of entangled flesh, hair, and bone fragments, including disfigured human fingers. Strong remained surprisingly calm, asking how the remains ended up in the pipe. Fenn immediately called the police, suspecting they had stumbled upon human remains in the pipes. When the police arrived, they confirmed the discovery of human flesh. Instead of denying the allegations, Strong calmly admitted that Rory Rush's body parts were stuck in the pipe, with additional remains stored in his freezer. A search of the freezer revealed a severed head, limb fragments, and more, all packed in plastic bags. The apartment was in disarray, with dirty dishes, rotting food, trash, and empty pizza boxes littering the floor. The police also found numerous adult magazines with sadistic content, as well as intimate toys, gags, whips, handcuffs, and devices for binding and hanging, suggesting a disturbing atmosphere. Adam's social media profiles openly displayed his interest in BDSM practices, with explicit photos and videos. Although he didn't have a long-term partner, several former partners accused him of being abusive, leading to their breakups. He wrote reviews of adult films and magazines, indicating he spent most of his free time consuming such content. Behind his calm exterior, he led a secretive life. The police cordoned off Adam's residence, treating it as a crime scene. The initial investigation suggested that they had a lot of work ahead, with potential discoveries that could be just as shocking as the head found in the refrigerator. Notably, the evidence found led investigators to suspect that the discovered body parts belonged to Rory Hash, whose torso was found in a water body 4 months earlier. A distinctive tattoo on the neck and DNA analysis supported this theory. In Adam's house, investigators found disturbing evidence of a gruesome crime. Hidden among piles of trash were the blood-stained clothes and shoes of Rory Rush, later confirmed to be the missing schoolgirl. The bedroom, where her bed was found, was covered in her blood, with splatters on the walls, furniture, and ceiling. A dissection table was found in the kitchen, suggesting that the suspect had dismembered and gutted the girl there. The entire area was contaminated with blood, skin particles, hair, and bone fragments. The bathroom was equally appalling, with dirt, blood, and signs of brutal acts everywhere. It appeared that Adam had attempted to dispose of the body by flushing it down the toilet in parts, but when this failed, he tried to fix the blockage himself. A large collection of sharp weapons was also found in the house, likely used to dismember the girl's body. Rory Hash was born in 1999 to a single mother, Shannon Dion. Despite her father's absence, Rory grew up in a loving environment, thanks to her mother and grandmother. Her family had a unique background, with her maternal grandfather founding a motorcycle club and being a skilled boxer with ties to the criminal underworld. Rory had a peaceful and carefree childhood, excelled in dance, and was an award-winning student. At 13, she received an award as the Best Cadet of the Year in her local army unit. However, her life took a dramatic turn at 15 when she got introduced to drugs by a friend and became dependent. She began associating with questionable individuals, neglected her studies, and eventually stopped attending school altogether. For about a year, Rory's family tried to get her help for her addiction, but she would relapse every time. At 17, she ran away from home and turned to prostitution to support her drug habit. Then, her mother got her into a specialized program for teenagers with addictions, which forced her into treatment. This time, the efforts paid off, and Rory was able to get back on track. She got a job, studied remotely, and eventually earned her high school diploma. She started planning for college and began a serious relationship with a boy named Anthony. In June 2017, Rory told her mother that she was pregnant and planned to keep the baby. However, Rory's mother didn't know that her daughter had started using drugs again. Rory met with Constable Christopher Crane at a shopping center in mid-August. He had been monitoring her for 18 months to keep her away from negative influences. During their meeting, Rory confessed that she had started using drugs again and lost her job a month prior, often exchanging sexual favors for money or drugs. Constable Crane was deeply disturbed by her revelation and promised to help. He stepped away to make an urgent call to arrange for her hospitalization. However, when he returned, Rory was gone, and the constable was unable to find her. The next day, Rory's mother and uncle took her to the hospital after finding her incoherent due to substance use. They left her in the emergency room queue and stepped out for about an hour. When they returned, they were shocked to discover that Rory had vanished, and sadly, she was never seen alive again. A review of hospital surveillance footage showed that Rory simply got up and left the hospital on her own. Her family reported her missing the next day, but despite an extensive search effort and widespread social media attention, no one was able to find her. It's likely that her addiction led her to seek out drugs at Strong's house, where she may have exchanged sexual favors for them. After Adam alerted the police to the location of the remaining body parts, an investigation was launched. Investigators expected him to cooperate, but instead, he became unresponsive and refused to answer questions at the police station. He remained calm and denied any wrongdoing. Because there was no direct evidence linking him to the girl's murder, Adam was only charged with desecrating a body. His lawyer's efforts to secure bail were unsuccessful, and he was held in jail awaiting trial. The investigators struggled to find an effective approach to questioning him, trying to elicit an emotional response that might provoke a confession. Strong was evasive when questioned about Rory's presence in his house and what he did to her, but openly discussed his fondness for bladed weapons and extensive knife collection. A thorough search of Adam's house uncovered a dirty hunting knife with dried skin fragments that appeared human in a hidden closet. Although the DNA from the knife didn't match Rory's, it belonged to another individual. It took several months to identify the owner of the DNA, but by July 2017, it was established that the traces on the weapon belonged to Candace Fitzpatrick, Rory Rush, who had vanished about 10 years prior. Candace Fitzpatrick shared similarities with Rory. Both struggled with substance abuse and legal issues, grew up in troubled families, and had a history of running away from home for months at a time. To survive, she would live with acquaintances and exchange sex for food and drugs. Born in 1989, Candace was 18 when she disappeared. Her family didn't notice her absence initially, and only reported her missing almost 2 years later, by which time all leads had gone cold. Candace's life and social circle led many to believe she could have ended up anywhere. Her parents thought she had run away and held on to the hope that she would return. However, in 2018, the news from law enforcement crushed their hopes of ever seeing their daughter alive again. It's worth noting that both victims of the suspect were the same age and looked almost identical, like sisters. This led people to believe that the police had caught a serial predator. When questioned about the second woman, the suspect Adam unexpectedly agreed to cooperate in exchange for better living conditions. He wanted a private cell, a large TV, internet access, and specific meals. Law enforcement officials were outraged by his demands, but they relented to get the information. Adam began his story by talking about his difficult childhood, including how he was abused by his stepfather from the age of 5. He also described how he started torturing and killing animals from the age of 7, finding physical pleasure in these acts. When the conversation turned to Rory, Adam Strong described in detail how he had dismembered her, seemingly taking pleasure in it, but claiming he only did so because she had died from an overdose. However, the police did not believe him, and he was unable to convince them of his story. When questioned about Candace, who had disappeared 10 years prior, Strong was surprised the police knew about her. He tried to find out how they had discovered his secret, and when told about human flesh stuck to an old knife, he became somber and regretful for not taking better precautions to cover his tracks. Strong admitted to meeting Candace, but denied killing her. However, the evidence gathered did not support his claim. In an attempt to gain sympathy, he inadvertently incriminated himself. The police informed him that Rory was pregnant at the time of her death, which Strong vehemently denied. The detectives realized that Strong would argue endlessly to prove his point, so they decided to provoke him into revealing more than he intended. They insisted that the victim was pregnant, and Strong, trying to prove otherwise, described in detail how he had examined Rory's reproductive organs and felt a pulsation, leading the police to believe that she might have still been alive during the attack. Later, Strong tried to deny everything, but his statements had been recorded on camera and were presented in court. He refused to disclose what he had done with Candace's body, and her remains were never found. The detectives were unable to learn about any other possible victims. During one of the last interrogations, Strong callously stated that he would like his condolences to be passed on to Rory's parents. At the trial, his lawyers argued that Strong was mentally ill and unable to be held responsible for his actions. However, a psychiatric evaluation determined that despite certain disorders, Strong was aware of his actions and could be held legally accountable. The trial began in September 2020, 3 years after Rory's death and 12 years after Candace's disappearance. Strong was charged with 2 counts of murder and desecration of Rory's remains. Although he never admitted his guilt, the evidence and his confessions left no doubt about his involvement in the heinous crimes. 4 of Strong's former partners also testified, describing his cruelty and violent tendencies. According to the prosecution, Strong had lured both women to his home, promising them money for intimate services, and then killed them. Adam Strong brutally murdered his victim, subjecting her to a prolonged and agonizing ordeal. He likely killed her out of fear that she would report him to the authorities. On September 4th, his mobile phone signal was detected near the city harbor, where he had dumped the victim's torso, hoping the current would carry it away. In April 2021, Adam Strong was convicted of murdering Candace Fitzpatrick and Rory Hash, as well as desecrating Hash's remains. He received a life sentence without parole. However, Strong showed no remorse, stating in his final remarks that his prison cell was an improvement over his previous living conditions. 6 months into his sentence, Strong unexpectedly revealed the location of his first victim's remains. The police followed his directions, and after several months of searching, they discovered human bones. DNA testing confirmed that the skeleton belonged to Candace Fitzpatrick, which was officially announced. Investigators believe that there may be additional victims in the Adam Strong case, possibly including at least one more woman. Notably, when Strong was initially arrested, his personal belongings were confiscated, including a chain with 3 rings. He later requested the items return, stating that the rings held sentimental value. Relatives of Rory and Candace later identified 2 of the rings as belonging to their dead daughters. However, the 3rd ring remains unidentified, sparking speculation about potential additional victims. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case, the case of Jessica Patel. Jessica Patel was born on September 16, 1983, in Leeds, West Yorkshire, England, where she grew up in a traditional Hindu community. As the eldest child, she developed a diligent and obedient nature from a young age. Jessica excelled academically, helped with household chores, and maintained a bright and cheerful personality. Jessica had a large social circle, but she was particularly close to a boy 3 years her senior, who was more reserved and shy. They often spent time together, and as Jessica matured, she blossomed into a beautiful young woman. Like many of her peers, she longed to find true love and build a happy family, much like the characters in her favorite movies. However, her romantic aspirations did not detract from her intelligence and determination. To achieve her goals, Jessica pursued higher education. In 2002, she enrolled at De Montfort University in Leicester, and 4 years later, she began studying pharmacy at the University of Manchester. There, she reconnected with Mitesh, an acquaintance who coincidentally attended the same faculty. They initially had no romantic feelings for each other, but over time, it turned into true love. This relationship has helped Mitesh grow and become more confident in himself. He is also accumulating knowledge and becoming more mature. Mitesh was extremely kind and caring towards Jessica, showering her with compliments and gifts. However, their happiness was short-lived. Jessica's mother passed away due to an incurable illness, leaving her devastated. Mitesh stood by Jessica's side, providing emotional support and comfort during this difficult time. As a result, their bond grew stronger. Jessica confided in her sister that she had finally found a trustworthy partner. Mitesh seemed perfect in every way, and she envisioned a happy marriage. In 2008, Mitesh asked Jessica's father for permission to marry her, following traditional Hindu customs. Although her father had reservations about Mitesh and felt that they were too young to get married, Jessica convinced him otherwise. They eventually got married in July 2009. The wedding was held in the beautiful garden of the bride's home. Initially, the newlyweds, Mitesh and Jessica, seemed like a perfect couple. However, things took a turn for the worse soon after. Mitesh's behavior changed dramatically. He became distant and cold, leaving Jessica feeling lonely. Their intimate life also suffered, and they didn't have any physical relationship for about 10 months after their wedding. This was very distressing for Jessica, who couldn't understand why Mitesh's feelings towards her had changed so drastically. Jessica tried to find fault in herself, wondering if she was the reason for Mitesh's change in. Meanwhile, she had just graduated from university in 2010 and was looking forward to starting her career as a pharmacist. She has a good education and a promising career. However, Mitesh's attitude continued to deteriorate. He became increasingly controlling and suspicious, constantly monitoring Jessica's every move. In February, her family suffered another grief. Her grandfather falls ill, his health begins to decline rapidly, and death seems inevitable. Manal's husband does not allow Jessica to spend much time with her family. This was the root of the conflict between they. When Manal confronted her husband about this, he became angry and responded by punching her in the face. As a result, when her grandfather was seriously ill, Jessica was only able to visit him a few times. Jessica comes from a traditional Indian family where his word is the law, restricting her from making her own choices. She felt trapped in a lonely marriage. One day, she confided in her family about her concerns. She expressed her suspicion that her husband, Mitesh, was being unfaithful. She noticed that whenever he received a phone call, he would excuse himself to another room. Additionally, he often stayed up late, spending hours alone, which further fueled her doubts. In 2012, Jessica's suspicions about her husband's infidelity were confirmed when she discovered romantic messages on his phone. Seeking help, she confided in Mitesh's cousin, with whom she had a good relationship. Instead of offering help or advice, the cousin blamed Jessica for her husband's behavior, implying that she was responsible for his infidelity. This response from Mitesh's cousin left Jessica feeling isolated and unsupported. To make matters worse, Mitesh also prohibited her from seeking comfort from her own sisters. It became clear that Mitesh was hiding something and trying to maintain his reputation and authority within the family and local community. In 2014, Mitesh and Jessica relocated to Lynor, a suburb of Middlesbrough in North Yorkshire, in an effort to start anew and distance themselves from their family. They purchased a large house, made renovations, and later opened their own pharmacy. Jessica had hoped that this fresh start would bring positive changes to their relationship. While their relationship did improve slightly, one thing was still missing: children. For 6 years, Jessica struggled with infertility, and Mitesh made veiled threats that he would leave her if she didn't become pregnant. In October 2015, she decided to go through in vitro fertilization. However, the initial attempts were unsuccessful, causing her to become increasingly anxious and depressed, especially with the added stress of hormone treatments. To make matters worse, Mitesh's behavior changed. He became distant and cold towards her at home. He would only show affection in public, and even then, it seemed superficial. He was often preoccupied with his phone, and the tension between them became unbearable. She reached her breaking point and suggested they separate, confessing that she was unhappy in the marriage. Mitesh's response caught her off guard. He claimed to love her and promised that things would improve over time. He even suggested that having a baby would strengthen their family bond. Jessica believed his words. For a moment she felt comforted and listened to, and her doubts subsided. On May 9, 2018, Mitesh and Jessica Patel received the exciting news that 3 of their embryos had been successfully fertilized, with a transfer scheduled for the following month. Jessica was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a mother and eagerly shared the news with her family. Tragically, their happiness was short-lived. A few days later, on the evening of May 14, 2018, Mitesh Patel made a frantic call to the emergency services, reporting that he had found his wife's body at their home. He claimed that he had left the house earlier to buy food and pick up his laptop from work. When he returned home, he found that the house had been burglarized and Jessica was lying unconscious on the living room floor. Mitesh told police that Jessica's skin was cold to the touch and there were bruises on her neck. He was clearly distressed, crying as he spoke. The police assured him that rescuers were on the way. When the officers arrived, they found Jessica's body on the living room floor, her wrists and ankles bound with duct tape. A grocery bag was nearby. Despite the medical team's efforts, Jessica died on the scene. The investigators sought to determine the motive behind the heinous crime. Upon examination, they found that the house had been thoroughly ransacked, with drawers and closets turned upside down. It was evident that the perpetrators had been searching for valuables, as they had even torn apart their bed mattress. The missing jewelry and cash further supported the notion that the primary motive was robbery. Jessica's husband, Mitesh, also believed that their house had been targeted by robbers. According to Mitesh's statement, on the day of the incident, he followed his usual routine, working a morning shift, going to the gym, and returning home afterward. His wife came home around 7 p.m. Later, Mitesh decided to order pizza and left the house at 7:44 p.m. Surveillance footage from a nearby pizzeria corroborated his alibi. Before leaving the pizzeria, he tried to call his wife to tell her he was on his way home, but no one picked up. Mitesh stopped at a pharmacy without notice, so he returned home later than expected. When Mitesh returned home at 8:50 p.m., he was met with a gruesome scene. His wife was bound, and their belongings were scattered everywhere. Neighbors was left reeling after the tragic event. This neighborhood is known as a wealthy and peaceful place, and has never had a crime before. The autopsy report revealed that Jessica's cause of death was strangulation, with the attacker using a bag, bare hands, and an electrical cord to ensure her demise. Since there were no signs of forced entry, investigators initially suspected that Jessica knew her attacker and had let them into the house. Jessica's family quickly arrived and comforted Mitesh, who appeared to be extremely sad and lost over the passing of his wife. However, the police had their suspicions, and a thorough search of the house uncovered some crucial clues that would eventually lead to the capture and trial of the perpetrator. A health monitoring app on Jessica's phone also played an important role in finding the truth. 3 days after Jessica's murder, the lead investigator contacted her father, who was still near the crime scene, and asked him and other relatives to return home so as not to interfere with the ongoing investigation. The investigator promised to provide more information later. Meanwhile, detectives were preparing to arrest the prime suspect in the case, Mitesh Patel. Several key pieces of evidence had led them to this conclusion. During the search of the crime scene, police found a damaged hard drive from a surveillance camera installed in front of the front door. The device was discovered in a suitcase under the bed. Further investigation uncovered a hidden photograph in their nightstand that showed Mitesh embracing another man named Amit. Additionally, footage from a camera across the street revealed that only Mitesh and Jessica entered and exited their home on the day of the murder, May 14th. The footage shows that Mitesh returned home at 3:30 p.m. Jessica arrived home from work at 7 p.m., and Mitesh left the house briefly to pick up pizza at 7:44 p.m., returning at 8:50 p.m. Since no one else was seen entering or leaving the house, the evidence pointed to one conclusion: Mitesh was the likely perpetrator. Mitesh was the prime suspect in the investigation, but the police lacked concrete evidence against him. As the detectives dug deeper, they uncovered a shocking secret that Mitesh had carefully kept hidden. Jessica had suspected that her husband was being unfaithful, and her instincts were correct. However, it was not what she expected. Mitesh was hiding his true sexual orientation. His marriage to Jessica was just a cover, a way to hide his true feelings for other men. 2 years into their marriage, Mitesh met Amit, an Indian man who was openly gay. Despite their cultural differences, they men quickly fell in love and secretly met each other whenever Mitesh was away on business. Unbeknownst to Jessica, her husband was leading a double life, pretending to be the perfect spouse while carrying on an illicit affair. In 2016, Amit moved to Australia, but Amit and Mitesh continued their relationship. Mitesh had had a plan to become same-sex parents with Amit by using Jessica's embryos and finding a surrogate. Mitesh had informed Amit that Jessica was having in vitro fertilization, IVF, and had asked if they could be together after this plan, to which Amit had replied that it would depend on the results. Mitesh confided in Amit, stating that eventually there would be no more obstacles in their relationship. In a message, Mitesh chillingly wrote, "Jessica's days are numbered." It was later discovered that Mitesh was secretly taking fertility-affecting medication to avoid intimate relations with Jessica. The investigation revealed that Mitesh's internet search history was reconstructed. He had searched for how to get rid of his wife, Hindu funeral, and procedure for obtaining insurance payments for the murder of a spouse. Notably, Jessica had a £2 million life insurance policy. After her death, Mitesh planned to claim the money and use it to buy a property in Australia. In the weeks leading up to Jessica's death, Mitesh had been actively searching for a new home, aiming to create a comfortable environment for his future family. Investigators analyzed their cell phones and found incriminating messages. They also discovered a fitness app that tracked the number of steps taken by Jessica's. The data showed that Jessica's phone had not moved since 8:04 p.m. However, 15 minutes later, the phone recorded 14 steps, suggesting that either Jessica had made her last movements or someone had moved the device. In contrast, Mitesh's phone data revealed high physical activity and an elevated heart rate in the period leading up to his wife's murder, which was unusual for him. Between 7:44 p.m. and 8:30 p.m., Jessica's husband, Mitesh, walked up and down the stairs multiple times, creating false evidence of a burglary by throwing objects around the house. Before calling 911, he went upstairs to conceal evidence, including a hard drive from a surveillance camera in the safe of the pharmacy he and his wife owned. During the police investigation, they found stolen jewelry, £25,000, and a couple of gold bars, which Mitesh claimed had been taken during the robbery. They also discovered a roll of duct tape similar to the one used to bind the victim's arms and legs. The torn end of the tape matched the piece taken as evidence from Jessica's body. To create an alibi, Mitesh had to go to his workplace the evening after the pizza party. Despite planning for years, he was remarkably careless and left a trail of evidence behind. Furthermore, DNA analysis found under Jessica's fingernails showed that it matched Mitesh's DNA. Mitesh had scratch marks on his neck, which he attributed to a fall. During the investigation and subsequent trial, Mitesh, the accused, denied any wrongdoing. He claimed that his interactions with Jessica were mere coincidence. The 3-week trial strung together the developments in the case. It was established that he attacked his wife as soon as she entered the house. She fought back and scratched the attacker but was eventually controlled. Initially, Mitesh had planned to kill his wife by administering the lethal dose of insulin. However, this method takes a long time to be effective and there is a risk that the plan will be discovered. To ensure a quicker outcome, Mitesh suffocated his wife by putting a bag over her head. To make sure his wife was dead, he strangled her with his hands and then used a rope. The prosecution presented physical evidence, including empty ampules found in Mitesh Patel's laptop bag, which linked him to the crime. Mitesh brutally murdered his wife, Jessica, in their home, a place they had shared for years. The entire ordeal took only 20 minutes. He then brutally tied her up to create the appearance that she had been robbed. Following the murder, Mitesh went about his day as usual, even stopping at a pizza place and calling Jessica's phone. The news of her death left both families in shock and disbelief. Tragically, Jessica had been seeking help in the months leading up to her murder, but her cries for aid were ignored. Only her sister seemed worried, but they couldn't do much to help either. The jury deliberated for 2 hours before delivering a guilty verdict. On December 5, 2018, the court sentenced Mitesh Patel to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Mitesh showed no remorse for his actions, and it seemed that the only person he felt sorry for was himself. The family was still grappling with the loss of Jessica's death, remembering her in their daily prayers and cherishing the happy moments they had shared together. It is unlikely that they will ever forgive Mitesh for his heinous crime. According to Hindu beliefs, her soul must be reborn. Since she suffered a lot in life and was unhappy but remained a good person, in the next incarnation, she will be rewarded. At least that was a comfort to her loved ones. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. Blackburn family. On the morning of November 10th, 2015, a car was parked outside a home on Sunnyfield Court. Davy Blackburn had returned from his daily gym workout. Just as he was about to step out of his car, a phone call delayed him for a few minutes. After concluding the call, Davy leisurely exited his vehicle and entered his house. Upon opening the door, he froze. His gym bag slipped from his hands. His wife lay on the living room floor in a pool of blood. Confused and deeply shocked, he rushed to her side for an examination, felt for a pulse, and immediately dialed emergency services. The young woman was still alive, though the living room was in disarray. Items scattered everywhere, and her purse emptied. Upstairs, their small child was crying. Emergency services arrived within 8 minutes. Police officers and investigators filled the house right after it got cordoned off. Amanda Blackburn was urgently transported to the hospital. Now let's pivot back to understand more about Amanda's background so we don't miss vital details of this tragic story. Amanda Grace Buers was born on July 31, 1987, in Muskegon, Michigan. She went to school in Indianapolis, Indiana, until her family moved to Elkhart in 1995. There she graduated from Elkhart Christian Academy in 2006, and later earned an associate degree from Pensacola Christian College in Florida by 2008. Amanda grew up in a deeply religious family, where Christianity and God's teachings were central tenets of their lives. Her father served as the lead pastor at First Baptist Church in Elkhart. Thus, church sermons and psalter were ingrained in her from childhood. She knew them by heart and honored them wholly. While other children raced toward adulthood's temptations like parties and first loves, Amanda's passion lay in her faith and her dream of serving Jesus faithfully. Amanda, a blonde-haired, slim girl with a welcoming smile and genuine intentions. Not just beautiful on the outside, Amanda's thoughts and heart were pure. In every action, she displayed love for her neighbor. As a teenager, she took a vow of chastity, promising not to even kiss a man until marriage, and she always kept her word. Amanda's heart raced when she met Davy Blackburn, her true love. A native of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Davy studied religion at Southern Wesleyan University and came from a devout Christian family. The two met on a blind date at a Hawk Nelson concert organized by Amanda's sister and Davy's best friend. At the time, they attended different colleges, but spent every vacation together. Their relationship was purely platonic and free from earthly desires. They enjoyed walks together and shared intimate thoughts and favorite excerpts from church books. Their bond grew stronger as they found joy in simple things and joked sincerely with each other. Once, before returning to school, they had a playful milkshake drinking contest, which Amanda lost. Davy teasingly called her Milk Girl, realizing then that she was the one he wanted to marry. The couple maintained a long-distance relationship for quite some time, constantly messaging via messengers, calling each other and chatting for hours. They spent every vacation together. Their respect for the seriousness of their relationship led them to see a psychologist to learn how to communicate properly. On August 1, 2008, Amanda and Davy Blackburn were married. After the wedding, Davy told friends that from the moment he kissed Amanda, he knew there was a special bond between them, a part of God's plan. For the first 4 years after their marriage, the Blackburns lived in South Carolina, where Davy served as an associate pastor at New Spring Church under Pastor Perry Noble. But the young man wanted more, and he suggested to Amanda that she move to Indianapolis to organize a new church for youth. Amanda was reluctant to leave her family and part with her loved ones. For a time, she struggled with the need to leave South Carolina. Eventually, she relented after her husband told her that God must have big things in store for them. In 2012, the Blackburns moved from South Carolina to Indianapolis to plant an independent, high-profile church on the city's north side. The religious organization started by the young family focused on young people, as made clear in the weekly videos they posted on their website, which discussed relationship advice, conflict resolution, and biblical perspectives on intimate relationships. By 2014, the family had welcomed their firstborn child, Weston Blackburn. They were perfectly happy with their comfortable home on a quiet street and their favorite roles within the church. This church was regularly attended by many young people who listened to and believed in their sermons. The family lived in perfect harmony and understanding. However, everything changed on November 10, 2015. Ambulance crews arrived at the Blackburn residence in the 2800 block of Sunnyfield Court around 8 a.m. The pregnant young woman was rushed to the hospital, where she was hooked up to a ventilator and underwent several resuscitative. Sadly, Amanda died the next day, along with her unborn baby. As it turned out, the family had been expecting a baby girl who was named Evie Grace at her burial. Her death sparked significant sympathy and prayers on social media over an extended period of time, as friends, family members, and strangers mourned Amanda with public posts. On November 11th, the day Amanda was officially declared dead, Davy released an official statement saying that Amanda made it her life's calling to love and serve everyone. She dedicated her life to knowing Jesus as her personal savior, and through passing and legacy, countless others will come to a saving faith in Christ. I firmly believe that God remains good, turning our tragedy into triumph, and that indeed the best is yet to come, Dave wrote. The murder of the pregnant woman was not only a devastating blow to the entire Orthodox family, but also a profound shock to the entire state. People demanded that those responsible for Amanda and her unborn child's death be brought to justice. In his first interview, Davy Blackburn recounted finding his wife Amanda injured and unconscious on the living room floor. She was partially unclothed, with her underwear lying nearby and herself lying face down in a pool of blood. The pastor informed investigators that he had left the house around 6 a.m. to go to the fitness center for a workout. When he departed, he left the door unlocked. He mentioned this habit during his statement, saying, "You always do that too, don't you? You leave and don't lock the door." While it's hard to say whether securing the door would have prevented this tragedy entirely, it's evident that it made entry much easier for the criminals involved. Unfortunately, Amanda did not have precious time to contact emergency services, resulting in an attack that left her with 3 gunshot wounds, one of them being fatal. No arrests were made in the days immediately following this heinous crime. However, police quickly determined that Davy Blackburn was not involved in this horrific incident. Trial transcripts reveal additional details from Davy Blackburn's testimony, alongside accounts from witnesses such as Scott Floyd, an emergency medical paramedic from the Indianapolis Fire Department, who arrived at their home following Davy's 911 call. According to Scott Floyd's testimony, upon arrival, they found Davy Blackburn outside at the end of the driveway with blood on his hands, but maintaining a very calm demeanor. Scott Floyd stated that Blackburn appeared not to fully comprehend what had transpired with Amanda when they reached him at their residence. Davy claimed he came home from the gym at about 7:30 a.m. and continued his phone call with his friend Kenneth Wagner in the driveway. He occasionally got out, strolled down the driveway, and peeked through the front door window to see if baby Weston was awake. He said he finished his call, entered his home at 8:10 a.m., and found Amanda lying face down on the floor. He thought she was sick or unconscious. He called emergency services at 8:22 a.m. It took him 12 minutes to make that call. In an emergency situation, 12 minutes is quite a long time. He repeatedly said he thought something had gone wrong with the pregnancy and maybe she'd gotten dizzy and fallen. Did he not notice after 12 minutes that there was brain matter about 5 feet away from her body? Emergency room Dr. Scott Floyd testified that the blood on her head was coagulated, leading him to believe that the gunshot had occurred a couple of hours earlier, but those transcripts were not made public. Davy was asked if he had called anyone else after dialing 911. He said he called his father next. Defense attorneys did not cross-examine Davy Blackburn. Authorities corroborated his story with surveillance footage from the gym. Thus, he was not among the suspects. An autopsy conducted on November 12th showed Amanda suffered a gunshot wound to the back of her head. She also had a gunshot wound to her lower left arm that went through her biceps, and another one that entered and exited her upper back. Multiple scratches were found on her left cheek, along with a split lip and a knocked-out lower tooth. These injuries indicated a possible struggle between Amanda and her attacker. A thorough investigation was launched. CCTV footage from nearby streets was examined. Neighbors and family acquaintances were interviewed as well. One neighbor reported hearing gunshots about 35 minutes after Davy left the house. Another neighbor, Reginald Townsell, mentioned their street wasn't known for incidents like this, and expressed shock by stating that the Blackburns didn't deserve this tragedy. Everyone thought highly of the Blackburn family. They were seen as wonderful and loving people by their community. Based on Amanda's injuries and the missing bank cards as well as MacBook bag, robbery seemed to be an initial theory during this investigation. On the morning of November 10, 2015, several emergency calls were made reporting home invasions, various residences near Blackburn's home. Around 5:20 a.m., one woman reported waking up to find her cell, laptop, purse, and keys missing from her apartment. Her car was also gone from the parking. The sliding glass door to her apartment was. 3 hours later, another woman reported a burglary. Someone had broken through the patio screen and entered the house. According to police reports, 4 televisions, a MacBook Pro, a Tiffany pearl necklace, a pink women's sweater, a remote control, a bag of oranges, and bedding were missing from the residence. Just 5 minutes after that second call, another individual from Sunnyfield Court contacted emergency services. This time, it was Davy Blackburn. Lieutenant Richard of the Indianapolis Police Department stated that police were investigating potential connections between this homicide and the other burglaries in the same neighborhood that morning. The police have not disclosed details about the ongoing investigation to maintain its integrity. However, after obtaining images of possible suspects from one of the burglarized homes, they released these images to the public for assistance in identifying and helping with the investigation. Davy Blackburn expressed confidence that the police department was doing everything within their power to apprehend his wife's perpetrator. Investigators assured him that they had unprecedented support to continue their investigation and were optimistic that promising leads would soon help identify those responsible. Key clues instrumental in tracking down 3 suspects included a stolen pink sweater, cell phone records, and an ATM receipt. The receipt and sweater were discovered in a stolen Chrysler Sebring used during the robberies. Authorities recovered this vehicle on November 11th near Blackburn's home. The debit card listed on the receipt matched Amanda Blackburn's stolen card. Investigators obtained a warrant to examine ATM camera footage and discovered video showing the driver concealing his face with a stolen pink sweater. Police relied on DNA testing, surveillance footage, and witnesses' testimonies to identify those responsible for these crimes. The results from the DNA testing of the sweater confirmed that J.N. Watson was one of the suspects. Watson's identification marked the first significant breakthrough in the case, as indicated in the affidavit. Cell phone records were obtained because Watson's number was already in the database due to his parole for a prior burglary. Subsequently, Diana Gordon's cell phone records were also retrieved. These records demonstrated that both Watson's and Gordon's cell phones were present in the vicinity when the crime occurred. The phone records further disclosed that Gordon and Watson were near the Chase Bank, where Amanda's debit card was used on the day of the murder. Larry Taylor emerged as a critical piece of information when police examined surveillance footage from the area. This footage enabled them to identify Taylor's phone number and trace his address. In the subsequent days, reports surfaced indicating that a firearm had been located near the Blackburn residence. According to police, an individual delivered this gun to the Broad Ripple Fire Department, claiming they had found it outside the couple's home. Crime lab technicians analyzed the weapon over 2 weeks of investigation and detective work. Police eventually charged 18-year-old Larry Taylor and 21-year-old J.N. Watson with Amanda Blackburn's murder. Another individual, 24-year-old Diana Gordon, who was suspected of burglary, was arrested for a parole violation and not charged with a felony. He did not enter Blackburn's home during the incident. The crime lab confirmed that a gun found near Amanda Blackburn's home was indeed used in committing the crime. All 3 suspects were taken into custody. During questioning, Larry Taylor admitted to shooting Amanda twice, explaining he acted out of fear she might scratch him after she jumped on him. After she fell over, he leaned down and shot her in the back of her head, subsequently watching her bleed to death. The criminal trio intended to rob the Blackburn house for money. They chose their target upon noticing that Amanda's husband had left their front door unlocked when he went to the gym. Inside, they confronted Amanda to prevent her from interfering. During this confrontation, Taylor struck her with a gun. Watson and Gordon saw the woman and decided it was time to leave. They already had the stolen bank cards, so they went searching for an ATM. After failing to withdraw $500 from one, they successfully obtained $1,400 from another. This is when CCTV captured them. They then headed back to the Blackburn house to pick up Taylor. In their absence, a struggle took place inside. Amanda, regaining consciousness after being struck, lunged at the intruder. He tackled her in response. Following this, Taylor placed the stolen debit cards in the accomplice's car, who was at an ATM during the crime. Upon their return, he confessed to shooting Amanda, according to court records. The Blackburn home was their third target on November 10th. Earlier, in their first break-in, they stole a laptop, wallet, and car while the resident slept. Inside that home, they noticed a recording camera, but moved on regardless. Next, they broke into another house through a patio window and stole 4 televisions, a laptop, jewelry, a bag of oranges, and a pink sweater that later helped police identify them. Court documents detailed this evidence collected against the suspects. The crucial piece was Watson's DNA, found on the pink sweater used to cover his face from surveillance as he tried withdrawing cash with Amanda Blackburn's bank card. Watson and Gordon cooperated with authorities in return for reduced sentences. Larry Taylor waived his right to remain silent and admitted being near the burglary scene, but claimed confusion about his activities. Formal charges were brought by the county prosecutor. Larry Taylor faces 13 charges, including felony murder, after knowingly killing Amanda Blackburn. Jalen Watson is charged with felony along with multiple counts of burglary and theft. Diana Gordon, already in custody for parole violation, also faces burglary charges. Additionally, there was a 4th person aware of these crimes, but not actively participating in them. He was questioned and released. The Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department's Violent Crimes Unit worked with the gang unit and federal marshals to arrest Taylor. Police Chief Rick Height praised the cooperation that led to the arrest. The detectives worked tirelessly all day, without sleep, to solve the murders in the city. With assistance from Assistant U.S. Attorney Josh Minkler and Prosecutor Terry Curry, justice was served. Because the victim was pregnant, prosecutors said they might consider filing additional charges related to the fetus. Even though the woman's underwear had been removed and her shirt pulled up, they stated there was no evidence to support rape charges. Larry Taylor's first trial took place in December 2021, but it ended abruptly when it was discovered that a juror had shared information about the case with other jurors. This disclosure interrupted the trial, leading to a mistrial being declared. The final trial took place in October 2022. Jury selection was more thorough this time. Over 100 individuals were considered as potential jurors, each having to fill out a 16-page questionnaire for attorneys to evaluate if a fair verdict could be reached. Larry Joe Taylor received an 86-year sentence at the Indiana State Correctional Institution for Amanda Blackburn's murder and for additional charges related to a home burglary. Diana Gordon and Jalen Watson agreed to plea deals and testified against Larry Taylor during the trial. Both received sentences ranging from 20 to 35 years in prison. Jalen Watson and Larry Taylor are currently incarcerated in the Marion County Jail. A murder conviction in Indiana can result in a prison sentence of 45 to 60 years, with some cases punishable by life imprisonment or even the death penalty. Prosecutors filed a motion to enhance Larry Taylor's sentence, potentially adding up to an additional 20 years since Amanda Blackburn was pregnant at the time of her death. Davy Blackburn, Amanda's husband and a church pastor, expressed relief that those responsible for his wife's death have been apprehended and will no longer pose a threat to anyone else. Amanda Blackburn's death has touched the hearts of many people, including the chief executive. Her funeral at a Christian church was attended by more than 2,000 individuals. Among those in attendance was Governor Mike Pence. The resident church has set up a donation page to assist with Amanda Blackburn's funeral and medical expenses. Davy Blackburn expressed hope for a judicial system that will wisely handle those responsible for his family's immense pain. Remarkably, he has consistently reported that he has chosen to forgive Amanda's killers. "I was very relieved to learn of the arrest," he told reporters. "Although everything inside me wants to hate, be angry, and despair, I choose the path of forgiveness, grace, and hope."
Shafilea Ahmed was born on July 14, 1986, a British Pakistani girl. Shafilea's father, Iftikhar Ahmed, originally hailed from the Gujarat district of Pakistan. At the age of about 20 to 22, Iftikhar moved to Britain for employment. While staying there for a while and during work, Iftikhar falls in love with a foreign girl and marries her. Soon he becomes a father, but when he returns to Pakistan and informs his family about his marriage, they do not accept it. Then Iftikhar's family puts heavy pressure on him to marry another Pakistani girl. Despite Iftikhar's resistance, he eventually succumbs to his family's insistence and he marries a Pakistani girl named Farzana. After the marriage, Iftikhar returns to Britain and, after revealing the truth to his first wife, divorces her. Then, after some time, Iftikhar calls his second wife, Farzana, to Britain from Pakistan. After coming to Britain, Iftikhar starts living with his wife in the city of Bradford in West Yorkshire. It is here that on July 14, 1986, Shafilea Ahmed is born. Shortly after Shafilea's birth, the family moves to the town of Warrington in Britain. It is here that Shafilea completes her early education. During this time, 2 more daughters are born in the family, and Iftikhar's family grows larger. Although this family resides in Britain, on holidays, Iftikhar used to take his wife and all his children to Pakistan for vacation. Now the year had come, 2003, and by now Shafilea Ahmed had also turned 17 and was studying law. Her dream was to become a lawyer. When Shafilea and the other children have a break on February 18, 2003, Shafilea comes to Pakistan with her family for vacation. During their trip to Pakistan, this family also participates in a family wedding ceremony. However, just a few days after this wedding, a major incident occurs with Shafilea. She accidentally drinks fennel floor cleaner. Actually, fennel is commonly used in Asia for cleaning floors in homes. Now, because fennel is made by mixing some chemicals and soap, drinking it causes severe pain in Shafilea's throat. The reason behind Shafilea drinking fennel is initially said to be because her parents pressured her into arranged marriage with a Pakistani boy. Because of this pressure, Shafilea drank the fennel intending to end her life. But later, her parents claimed that someone had poured fennel into an old bottle of water, kept in the same bottle usually used for drinking water, and in the darkness of the night, Shafilea mistook fennel for water and drank it. Due to this mistake, Shafilea had to endure a lot of pain. As a result, she's admitted to a hospital in Pakistan. Now, because Shafilea's injury was quite severe, she has to stay in the hospital for a long time. During this time, the holidays of other family members also end, so Iftikhar takes his 2 children and wife back to Britain, while Shafilea has to stay in Pakistan for treatment. However, shortly after, Iftikhar arranges for Shafilea's return as well, and on May 27, 2003, Shafilea returns to Britain. Straight from the airport, Shafilea is admitted to a hospital for treatment through an ambulance. After several months of treatment, Shafilea's throat heals considerably, and now she rejoins college. Alongside college, she also starts a part-time job. But on September 18, 2003, a college teacher notices that Shafilea Ahmed hasn't been coming to college for the past week. Attempts are made to contact Shafilea via phone, but she cannot be reached. When teacher asked about this to Shafilea's parents, they revealed that Shafilea has not been home for the past week. Their daughter has been missing for a week, and her parents hadn't filed any complaints about her yet, which strikes Shafilea's teacher as very strange. Immediately after this, they inform the police. Upon filing the case, a police team arrives at Shafilea's house for investigation, and questioning begins with her parents. Shafalea's parents say that they last saw Shafalea at their home on September 11th, 2003, and since then, she hasn't been seen. Upon this, the police ask, "When your daughter has been missing for a week, why haven't you filed a complaint with the police yet?" To this, Shafalea's parents respond, "This is not the first time Shafalea has been missing from home for a few days. It has happened several times before." To confirm this, when the police checked the records, it is revealed that Shafalea has been missing from home several times in the past. The first time was when Shafalea was only 12 years old. She went missing with her younger sister on March 10, 1998. Because of this, her parents had also filed a missing report for both their daughters with the police. However, at that time, Shafalea returned home with her sister as evening approached. According to records, Shafalea ran away from home for the second time on November 25, 2002. Once again, her father, Iftikhar Ahmad, filed a missing report for his daughter. After extensive searching, Shafalea was found by the police sitting in a park. According to police records, for the third time, Shafalea left home with a friend on February 3, 2003. This time, Shafalea did not return home for 2 days, and then on February 5, 2003, she went to a safe house for orphaned people and filed a report against her parents for domestic violence and mental abuse. After the report was filed, the police officer spoke with Shafalea Ahmed and her parents, and after everything was cleared up, Shafalea returned home. After this, on February 18, 2003, Shafalea, along with her 2 sisters and parents, goes to Pakistan for a family function and disappears from there shortly after returning to Britain. Now, looking at old records, the police also suspect that Shafalea Ahmed may have gone somewhere again this time and will return home in a few days. Therefore, the police try to find Shafalea in all those places where she could have gone. However, even after a few days, the police cannot find any trace of Shafalea from anywhere. Considering Shafalea's history of running away from home before, the police show a little laziness in the investigation this time. After this, some local media start making an issue out of the police's laziness. As a result, demand for a thorough search for Shafalea increases at the local level. Due to the progress in the Shafalea missing case, the police accelerate their investigation. Subsequently, they discover numerous poems written by Shafia at her home. These poems reveal her dissatisfaction with her household environment. Her parents wished for Shafia to lead a traditional Pakistani girl's life, but she favored Western culture. Through her poetry, she expressed this pain. As Shafalea's poems reach the public, the case gains momentum, putting pressure on the police to find her. Consequently, law enforcement intervenes, intensifying their search efforts in places Shafalea could have visited. Eventually, CCTV footage confirmed Shafalea's identity to her parents, confirming that the girl in the footage is indeed Shafalea Ahmad. A few days after Shafalea went missing, her parents identified her. This made the police believe that at least Shafalea was alive. However, a new turn in the case occurs when the CCTV footage shows Shafalea's class teacher. Actually, when the picture is shown to Shafalea's class teacher, they say that the girl in the photo is not Shafalea Ahmed. Some other people also confirm by watching the CCTV footage that the girl in the footage is not Shafalea. Now, the police find it very strange that Shafalea's parents themselves did not recognize their daughter from the CCTV footage. The police had many questions in their minds, and to find the answers to those questions, they secretly installed some audio recording devices at Shafalea's home. The police were listening to everything that was happening in Shafalea's house through an audio recording device. According to the recording, one day Iftikhar is heard saying, "In Britain, if you kill 40 people and there is no evidence against you, then the law here can't do anything to you." Additionally, one day Iftikhar Ahmad is heard saying, "If the police collect DNA samples from inside the car, what could happen?" Furthermore, the audio recording device captures some suspicious conversations that lead the police to suspect that perhaps Shafalea's father had something to do with his daughter. Now, because the police start to doubt Iftikhar Ahmed, they use his audio recordings as evidence, and on December 18, 2003, the police arrest Iftikhar and his wife Farzana Ahmed, along with 5 other family members, on charges of murdering Shafileah and hiding her body. The police had arrested these people solely on suspicion. The police hoped that during the investigation, some concrete evidence would be found against these peoples. However, no evidence was found against any of the arrested persons, and eventually, the police released them all. It had been a year since 2004, and there was still no evidence in the case of Shafileah Ahmed. The police were engaged in efforts to locate Shafileah. Meanwhile, floods occurred in the famous Kent River, flowing from the Sedgwick area of Britain. When the floods were under control, the body of a girl were found in extremely poor condition on the banks of this river. The distance between the place where the body was found and where Shafileah Ahmed had disappeared was 70 miles. But still, the police have doubts whether this corpse could be Shafileah's. However, to confirm this, DNA samples are collected from the dead body and then matched with the DNA of Iftikhar and Farzana. In this case, a major twist occurs when a body washed away in the flood matches with the DNA samples of Iftikhar. This meant that the body washed away from the river was not someone else's but Shafileah Ahmed's, meaning in the search for Shafileah Ahmed, whom the police had been looking for the past year, now reaches the police itself in the form of a corpse. Now, the biggest question in front of the police was who and why murdered Shafileah Ahmed. However, even before the statements and actions of Corpse's parents, there were doubts, and in 2003, these 2, along with 5 others, were arrested. Therefore, once again, Shafileah's parents are arrested and questioned. The trial of this case is also going on, but even this time, no allegations can be proven against them, which leads the police to release them again. However, after that, the police detain some other suspects and proceed with the investigation against all of them. But despite many efforts, the police cannot reach the murderer. As time passes, people slowly start to forget about Shafileah Ahmed's case. Shafileah disappeared in 2003, and now it was 2010. That is, it had been 7 years since Shafileah's death. By now, Shafileah's family had also moved on from the incident and had become busy with their daily lives. But then, on August 25, 2010, a major theft occurs at Iftikhar Ahmed's house. By now, Iftikhar Ahmed's family had already become the center of attention in the city due to their daughter's disappearance. Due to this, when theft occurs in this house, it starts making headlines on the front page of newspapers. But once again, this puts heavy pressure on the police. Despite working honestly, the police quickly get involved in the search for the thief. After many days of hard work, the police make a revelation that surprises everyone. Actually, the police arrest not someone else, but Iftikhar Ahmed's daughter, Alicia Ahmed, on charges of theft in the house. In fact, Alicia was Shafileah's younger sister. According to Alicia, she didn't get as much money from home as she demanded and needed. Because of this, she orchestrated the theft of her father's money at her own home. However, the police had solved the theft case very quickly. But the police spot an opportunity here and now. They start talking to Alicia about her sister Shafileah, who disappeared many years ago, and reopen the file related to the Shafileah case. In the initial conversation, the police suspect that Alicia knows something about the disappearance of Shafileah that the world is still unaware of. The police officers try to uncover what happened with Shafileah, but Alicia refuses to cooperate with them. However, the police then tell Alicia, "You have orchestrated a theft in your own house, which could lead to a long prison sentence for you. But if you can provide any information about Shafileah that nobody else knows, your sentence could be significantly reduced." Afterwards, when Alicia reveals some details to the police, everyone is left stunned. Alicia explains, "It was not someone else but my father, Iftikhar, and my mother, Farzana Ahmed, who had beaten Shafileah Ahmad in front of all of us sisters. Then our father put polythene on her face, and due to suffocation, she was dead. Then he placed Shafileah's body in his car and threw it into the distant jungle. However, due to the flood, the body drifted to the riverbank from the jungle." According to Alicia, Iftikhar and Farzana did not like their daughter's modern lifestyle at all. On the surface, Shafilea started falling in love with a boy, and when this matter comes to light, Iftikhar and Farzana quickly try to arrange Shafilea's marriage with their preferred boy. When the family goes to Pakistan for a family function, there is an attempt to forcefully marry Shafilea to a boy there, but Shafilea refuses to marry for this reason, and she consumes fennel. After that, her health deteriorates, and her marriage does not happen either. When Shafilea returns to Britain, her family members here also insist on arranging her marriage with a boy of their choice. But when Shafilea repeatedly refuses this marriage, her father gets angry, and at first beats Shafilea in anger and then covers her face with a polythene bag, and then due to suffocation, Shafia Ahmad dies here. But immediately after this disclosure, Alicia Ahmed becomes a government witness in the case. In exchange, she is assured a minimum sentence in the theft case. However, based on Alicia's statement on September 2, 2010, Farzana and Iftikhar are arrested, and then a case of their own daughter's murder is pursued against them. Both of them remain in jail for several months after the arrest. However, nearly a year later, on September 15, 2011, they are granted bail by the Manchester Crown Court. In the further investigation, the police gather some crucial evidence, and based on that evidence, the trial of this case begins in the Chester Crown Court on May 21, 2012. Initially, Farzana and Iftikhar continue to deny their involvement in their daughter's murder, but when Farzana begins to suspect that she is being framed for her own daughter's murder, she finally accepts in court on July 9, 2012, that Shafilea Ahmed's murder was not committed by anyone else but by Iftikhar Ahmed himself. In her statement, Farzana also reveals that she tried to stop Iftikhar, but instead, Iftikhar beat and threatened her family, saying, "If any of you ever talk about this to anyone, your fate will be just like Shafilea's." Now, 2 witnesses had testified against Iftikhar Ahmed. Besides, the police who gather evidence also indicate that it was Iftikhar Ahmed who murdered Shafilea, then threw her body far into the jungle. However, a natural disaster struck that area, and with the floodwaters, Shafilea's body drifted and reached the riverbank on its own. After a lengthy trial in August 2012, Farzana and Iftikhar are found guilty of murdering their own daughter and disposing of her body. After the murder, they are then sentenced to 25 years each. It is also proven in court that this was an honor killing. Following this verdict, every year on July 14th, Shafilea Ahmed's birthday, the National Day of Memory for Victims of Honor Killings, is observed in her memory. So with this, the case of Shafilea Ahmed comes to a close. However, perhaps nature also desired that Shafilea Ahmed receive justice and her killers be punished. Therefore, albeit late, Shafilea's parents, her murderers, are also sentenced.
Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Shelby Von Holt. Shelby Von Holt was born on September 7, 2000 in Fort Wayne, Indiana, USA, as a cheerful young girl. She was the second of 5 children in her family, which consisted of her mother, Shah Hartman, father, Von Holt, older sister, Peyton Hartman, and younger siblings, Devin Von Holt and Isaac Von Holt. Shelby graduated from Troy Center High School in 2018 and spent the next 2 years working at a steakhouse and other places. During this time, she was contemplating her desired career path and seemed to be leaning towards a therapeutic field, although she had not yet decided on the exact specialty. As a 20-year-old, Shelby was living life to the fullest, known for her cheerful personality that made her the life of every party. She loved to smile, dance, sing, and spend time with friends. Notably, she was living independently, although the reasons for this were unclear. While she was not active on most social media platforms, she frequently posted cheerful photos on Facebook, many of which featured moments shared with her young niece, Camila, who is the daughter of her older sister, Peyton. According to her mother, Shelby met Valerie Rose Hardick, a 22-year-old woman, on Facebook. Although they reportedly did not have a close relationship, Valerie's life is shrouded in mystery, with rumors of a troubled childhood, questionable associations, and potential mental health challenges. On June 20, 2021, at 6:48 p.m., a 911 dispatcher received a distress call from a woman who managed to convey that she was injured and claimed Valerie shot her. Although it's unclear whether the woman provided her address or if the police traced the call, officers from the Fort Wayne Police Department arrived at Shelby's residence shortly after. Upon arrival, the officers forced entry into the residence and found Shelby barely conscious, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds, and surrounded by a large pool of blood. One officer stayed with Shelby while the others conducted a protective sweep of the residence to ensure no other victims were present and that the perpetrator was not still inside. They did this while waiting for an ambulance and local firefighters to arrive. During this time, the officers attempted to provide first aid, and a surgeon asked Shelby if she knew who had shot her. Shelby identified Valerie as the attacker. Emergency medical personnel soon took over Shelby's care, rushing her to the nearby hospital, where she was in critical condition, but still alive. Meanwhile, Shelby's family was informed of the incident, and Fort Wayne Police Department officers began gathering evidence from her home. A doorbell camera was a significant piece of evidence, and after reviewing its footage, a person of interest was identified, though details were not publicly disclosed at the time. In a remarkable coincidence, a disturbing incident took place the day after Shelby's critical injury, approximately 50 kilometers away in Ohio. At around 10:30 a.m., the local police department received multiple calls about a suspicious-looking young woman lurking around a convenience store at a gas station. According to eyewitnesses, she had been wandering around the store and near the gas pumps for about an hour, seemingly trying to catch a glimpse of customers' credit card numbers as they made their purchases. Furthermore, the police had already received a prior call from a man who reported seeing the same woman earlier at the convenience store, claiming that she had pointed a gun at his back. After taking precautions, police officers arrived at the gas station where they found the woman and arrested her without any violence. The 22-year-old woman was identified as Valerie Rose Hardick. She had a 9mm handgun on her, which was the same type of weapon used in the attack on Shelby. Shelby had already identified her attacker as Valerie, which made the police even more certain they had the right person. The car Valerie was driving was the same one captured on Shelby's doorbell camera, leaving the scene just before Shelby called for help. Although the investigation is ongoing, Valerie was taken into custody and transferred to the county jail, where she will await her court hearing in the local municipal court. Shelby was clinging to life after being gravely injured by 89mm bullet wounds to her chest and abdomen. Doctors placed her in an induced coma and did everything they could to save her. Unfortunately, 3 days after the brutal attack on June 22, 2021, Shelby's body gave in to the injuries, and she was pronounced dead. According to her mother and media reports, Shelby died after undergoing 4 complex abdominal surgeries that did not yield the desired results. She received 20 blood transfusions, but the medical outlook was always bleak. If Shelby had survived, doctors believed her legs would have needed to be amputated. The brutal murder raises questions about what could drive someone to commit such a heinous crime. According to the limited information available, investigators attributed the motive to jealousy. It is alleged that Shelby was dating a man who Valerie was strongly attached to, although his identity was not revealed. Valerie was charged with criminal assault and aggravated threats. Initially held in Ohio on a $100,000 bail for threatening a man with a firearm at a gas station, Valerie was later transferred to Allen County to face charges for Shelby's murder. Shelby Von Holt's remains were memorialized in a private ceremony at a funeral home on June 29, 2021, and then cremated. In early 2022, Valerie Rose Hardick entered a plea deal in connection with Shelby's murder. Hardick pleaded guilty, citing mental illness as a defense. As part of the deal, the prosecution dropped a charge related to the use of a firearm during the crime, which could have added 20 years to her sentence. In September 2022, Hardick's sentencing hearing took place in the Superior Court of Allen County. As agreed, she pleaded guilty but mentally ill. During the hearing, her defense attorney presented mitigating circumstances, including her difficult upbringing, marked by her stepmother's death, abuse by her stepbrother, and a history of mental health issues. However, the prosecutors emphasized the jealousy motive behind Shelby's murder and highlighted Hardick's criminal history, which had escalated over time. They also noted that Hardick was on probation at the time of the murder, having been part of an alternative program due to previous charges. Throughout the hearing, Valerie's behavior was inconsistent. At times, she seemed coherent and fully aware of the situation, but at other moments, she appeared nervous, distracted, and even smiled at Shelby's family. Despite this, she answered the court's questions accurately. Although the exact content of her statements was not specified in media reports, it was noted that she never expressed remorse or apologized to Shelby's family. Shelby's parents, on the other hand, poignantly conveyed their profound loss during their victim impact statements. Shelby's father reminisced about his daughter's love for symbolic icons like peace signs and how she was still finding her way in life at the time of her murder. He reflected on Valerie's demeanor during her guilty plea, stating that her voice conveyed a lack of remorse. The grieving father asserted that by admitting to intentionally killing Shelby, Valerie seemed to take pride in her crime, which demonstrated a clear lack of regret. Toby expressed his belief that there was more to the story behind Valerie's motivation for killing Shelby than just jealousy, and he referenced the defense's argument about Valerie's mental health issues. Shelby's father pointed out that many people in prison have mental health issues, and he vowed to continue seeking answers about the tragedy. In a heartfelt reflection, Toby noted that there were two tragedies in this case. The first was the shocking and agonizing death of his daughter, and the second was Valerie's decision to throw away her future in a fit of rage. He acknowledged that Valerie's children would greatly suffer as a result. It was revealed that Valerie, who was 22 years old, had at least 2 children, although no further details about them were publicly disclosed. The grieving father said that the tragedy wouldn't stop at the graveyard or in the courtroom, because true justice couldn't be achieved in such a tragic situation. However, he said he had forgiven Valerie in order to find peace within himself, which he believed was guided by his faith in Christ. He was confident that Shelby was with God and reiterated his deep love for her. Shelby's mother, Shauna, also spoke about her feelings. She remembered her daughter as a princess from the day she was born, describing her as a kind spirit who would always help a friend, no matter the distance. Shauna vowed to attend all possible appeal hearings that Valerie's defense might initiate in the future. She shared the pain of remembering her lifeless daughter and the helplessness she felt, unable to protect her. All she could do was lay her head on Shelby's chest as her daughter lay in a medically induced coma. She publicly praised her daughter's courage, saying that Shelby had managed to name her attacker twice and fought hard for her life after being attacked. Shauna detailed the severe injuries Shelby suffered, explaining that her heart was racing at an unsustainable pace. Although Shelby's medical expenses totaled nearly $500,000, Shauna didn't seek compensation because they were waived following her death. The funeral expenses alone were around $115,000, but Shauna emphasized that she didn't expect to receive any compensation and didn't want any money from Valerie. Holding back tears, Shelby's mother poignantly expressed that memories were all she had left, and she wished she could trade places with her daughter. She noted that some days, the grief was so intense that she couldn't muster the strength to get up. After the legal representatives finished their presentations and the victim's family statements, the court awaited the judge's verdict. Under Indiana law, the sentence could range from a minimum of 45 years to a maximum of 65 years, with an average of 55 years. Valerie's defense team requested the minimum sentence, citing various mitigating factors, while the prosecution sought the maximum sentence. Before making his decision, the judge pointed out that it was clear the murder was planned in advance, and Valerie was fully aware of her actions. Her decision to flee to Ohio further supported this. While the judge acknowledged that Valerie had a difficult upbringing, marked by inadequate education, personal traumas, and mental health issues, he emphasized that she already had a growing criminal record at the time of Shelby's murder, including pending charges for a separate crime. Despite her past attempts at rehabilitation, her criminal history and lack of success in those attempts meant her traumatic past could not be used as an excuse. Taking these factors into account, the judge sentenced the 23-year-old Valerie to the maximum possible sentence of 65 years in prison. He also ordered the destruction of the weapon used in the murder. According to the American Correctional System's records, Valerie is currently incarcerated in an Indiana women's prison, with the earliest estimated release date being June 18, 2027, at which time she will be 72 years old. After the court session, Shelby's parents said they were satisfied with the verdict. However, they later made it clear that no verdict could ease their pain, especially since Valerie would be spending her days in prison. Shelby's mother emphasized that she would always miss and remember her daughter. This case is particularly notable because the victim, who was mortally wounded, was able to identify her killer. A prosecutor not involved in the case explained that when a dying victim identifies their attacker, this is known as a dying declaration. These statements provide a crucial lead for detectives and are the only exception to the hearsay rule in court trials, ensuring that the most reliable evidence is presented. The prosecutor also stressed that dying declarations are admissible in court because they tend to produce more trustworthy statements. Given the immense pressure and tragic circumstances surrounding them,